on the 3rd week of January. Sandali lang, Pasensya. That's ano lang. Nakikita po ba yung screen? Blank screen?
Yes po.
Yes po. Sandali. So, we are heading towards the end of the semester. At na-mention ko naman na 'to last time, pero gusto ko lang i-highlight ulit para po hindi tayo magkaproblema sa hindi tayo magkaroon ng kalituhan. Uulitin ko lang. Kuha yung ko, yung pen tab ko. Wait lang. Yan. Ganun. So, ang atin pong schedule, meron tayong natitirang 2 meetings including this one. Sorry, hindi talaga okey yung aking yan. So, sorry. On today, January 8, group presentations pa din po tayo. Groups 3 and 7. And then on January 15, next Saturday, same. But since isa na lang yung presenter niyan, yung the rest is, yung async period is hindi na natin gagamitin. And then hindi na din, wala tayong gagawin nun. Okay, pahinga naman, 'di ba? Kasi medyo nasiksik natin nung mga nakaraan. So, pahinga na lang after nun. And then para makapag-review na kayo for the final exam, which would be on the 22nd examination. Ano po ang oras? 2:30 to 4 PM. So, 2:30 to 4, it's 1.5 hours. Same types of questions that appeared during the midterms. And then, siguro bibigyan ko lang din kayo ng konting extension na 10 minutes. So, it closes at exactly 4:10 PM. Okay? Ang alam ko, na-discuss ko naman na 'to sa inyo, na kapag sinabing closing time, sarado na siya nun. So, wag niyong i-ki-click ang submit button ng eksaktong 4:10 kasi sarado na nga po yun. Marami kasing nako-confuse dito and kailangan nililinaw ko na ngayon na wag na kayong magpasa ng saktong-sakto. At wag kayong magtataka na sarado na kasi alam niyo yun, closing time na nga, eh. So, meron kayong time, 4:09, yun na yung max time ninyo talaga, yun na yung pinaka-late niyong dapat na mag-submit kayo, 4:09. And 'pag nag 4:10, sarado na siya automatically. Okay? dating gawin kung meron kayong mga problema na emergency, may sakit, or whatever, provide excuse letters together with supporting documents. Pagkatapos kasi ng week na ito, January 22, bigayan na ng grades. Excuse. Bigayan na kasi ng grades yon. So, hindi na natin pwedeng patagalin pa. Kaya kung kaya sana mag-take na kayo. Kasi ang problema kapagka hindi nakapag-take, siyempre magpe-prepare na naman ako ng bagong set ng questions. Kung hangga't kaya lang naman, kung hindi naman makokontrol, eh, okey lang, wala naman akong magagawa dun. So, gusto ko sana kung ano, kung kaya naman and pakiusap, wag naman kayo magse-set ng ano, alam niyo yung alam naman ninyo kung ano yung priorities ninyo, okey? Kung meron kayong event kung saan man, priority niyo ang school, i-prioritize niyo yun. Hindi ako mag-a-adjust para sa mga events na gano'n, kasi ito ay in-announce na sa inyo dati pa na magfa-final exam. Ang ina-accommodate ko lang po for rescheduling ay yung mga talagang emergency and yung mga unexpected na like nag-brown out or nawalan ng internet or pero siyempre mag-ready din naman sana kayo 'no, kung kaya niyong ready ng data, kung ano, kung kaya lang naman. Hindi man ako namimilit. Pero yung may pupuntahan kayo somewhere, even it's a family gathering or what, take note gathering ha. Pero yung mga emergency sa family, eh, excuse po yun, basta po magbigay kayo ng document. Kailangan nating i-define kung ano yung mga kailangan talaga muna ninyo i-prioritize, okey? Ang dami kasi hindi lang sa inyo, sa iba ko ding mga klase, na kung saan-saan nagpupunta. Alam namang final exam, eh. Eh, kung sa face to face yan, hindi yan pinapayagan, okey? Ah, first year kayo ngayon, siyempre mag-second year na kayo. Dapat may ano tayo, character development, 'no? Okey, at pangalawa, coverage. Ang coverage po ay chapter 5 kasi dun po tayo natapos dito po sa 4 tayo natapos nung midterms, eh. Chapter 5 onwards, lahat, pati itong mga dini-discuss niyo ngayon. So with that, the presenters, I am requiring you to submit a PDF copy of your presentations. Diyan po kasi ako kukuha. Okay. Although alam ko naman yung mga topics niyo kasi kaso siyempre may mga in-add kayo diyan and I would like to, use them and that would be for your advantage din kasi alam na alam niyo yung topic na yun, eh. And 'pag lumabas yun sa finals 'di ba, ano siya, dagdag confidence na may masasagutan kayo dun sa exam, okay. So, pakipasa na po as soon as possible, PDF copy, uh, either personal message or email, okey po? Another rule that I'm going to set by now, I need you to open your cameras. Bakit? May mga na-observe ako during the conduct of midterms and even in your quizzes. May mga ziniro ako na sagot. Alam niyo na yun kung bakit. Nagbibigay naman ako ng comments. And ano naman tayo, kailangan nating ayusin yan. Hindi pwedeng palampasin ko lang yung mga ganyan. So, ito po, sinabi ko naman sa inyo, lahat ng actions ay may kaakibat na consequences. So, ito ang consequence nun. Ah, bukod sa ziniro ko na kayo sa mga sinagutan niyo, eh, kailangan niyo mag-open ng camera. Dalawang ways. Kung kayo ay may another device available for you to use, kailangan makikita kayo from your, yung likod niyo at makikita yung screen ng computer or gadget na ginagamit ninyo. So, kailangan po yun. If isa lang ang device, you can use the camera of the device, yung mismong camera. Magjo-join kayo ng call and then, kailangan kasi magsa-swipe-swipe lang naman kayo sa screen, eh. So, dapat makikita ko naman yung movement niyo and dapat ang makita sa inyo is yung harap at magsasagot kayo sa paper and then you will just take pictures of it and then isasubmit niyo siya. So ayun po. Ah, ulitin ko ha, kailangan niyo po mag-join ng call. Hindi alam ko ginagawa rin 'to ng ibang prof, eh. At ako nga hindi ko naman na siya pinapagawa dahil unang-una sa lahat ayokong makidamay sa internet ano niyo, usage and pangalawa, kasi alam ko dapat by now, ano na kayo sa actions niyo, responsible na kayo and alam niyo na ang tama't mali, pero may mga makukulit, eh. 'Di kayo madala sa pakiusapan, eh. So ayan po ang consequence. And ulitin ko lang, kapag meron pa rin talagang nag-cheat dito, zero na po 'yun, automatically. Maliwanag?
Yes
Maliwanag.
po.
Okey, sige. Maliwanag, Sa mga wala dito pakisabihan sila ng ganitong sistema. Anyway, recorded naman 'to. At ayun, ulitin ko lang na ito ay consequence ng mga naging observations ko sa inyo. Halatang-halata kapag copy-paste, ano ba kayo, at saka yung mga magkakaparehas ng sagot. Ultimo, comma, ultimo yung misspelling, same. Hindi ako pinanganak kahapon. Alam ko 'yan. So, ayun nga, ang effect kasi nun siyempre sa inyo, short term, oo, papasa kayo. Long term, sa behavior niyo, may effect 'yan, eh. Magiging tamad, magiging dependent, hindi made-develop ang critical thinking. So, ba't niyo kasi kailangang mag-rely sa mga ganyan? May isip naman kayo, 'di ba? Kung nahihirapan kayo sa subject, dagdag effort tayo. Hindi naman iga-grant ni universe yung mga actions niyo na I mean kung meron kayong gusto, paghirapan. Kung ano ang in-exert mong effort sa universe, ibabalik ni universe sa'yo. Kung sumikapan mo talaga, nag-effort ka talaga sa isang bagay, ibibigay naman ni universe dahil deserve mo yun. Ngayon kung dumaan tayo sa mga proseso na unfair sa mundo, ibabalik yon ni universe sa inyo, okey? Naiintindihan po ba? Matatanda na kayo, alam niyo na dapat yung mga consequences niyo and you should be also accountable for your actions. So, ayan lang po. Kung may tanong ba kayo dito sa ganito, magpapa-survey naman ako siguro bukas. Kung yung sa setup niyo baka may mga alam ko may mga concerns kayo regarding that. Sa space, 'yan, hindi ko naman 'yun ini-invalidate. Ang gusto ko, magpapa-survey ako para makita ko yung ipo-post yung mga proposed setup niyo dun and then, ah para makita ko din kung ano, kung concerned kayo sa space, puwede naman tayong magkaroon ng konting adjustments, pero walang exemption sa rule na 'to. Lahat kayo kailangan mag-open camera, okey? Tapos ayan, wala naman na akong ibang concern about the finals. Uh, you may now, proceed with the presentation for today. So, we have, sandali, we have yes, sandali. Have, the climate change, 'di ba? I think it's yeah, group 3. Grupo nina Besario, Ablola, Aguilar, Bakiran, Shen, and Corocochia. So, puwede na po kayong mag-start. Thank you.
Ma'am, pwede na po ba mag-start? Sige po, ma'am.
Yes, puwede na mag-start, sorry.
Bayan, naalala nyo pa ba? Ay wait, parang nagawa natin ng ibang group. Palitan natin.
Bayan, naalala niyo pa ba?
Ay wait, nagawa na rin to ng ibang group. sorry sa mga group. Gawin na lang natin mala-explain. Ayan. Anyway, magandang umaga, ako si Wole. Baller Cutie, Char, may tanong ako. Naalala niyo pa ba ang mga makasaysayang trahedya na kinaharap ng ating bansa sa nakalipas na isang dekada? Katulad ng Typhoon Pablo noong December 2012, Super Typhoon Yolanda noong November 2013, Typhoon Quinta noong October 2020, Super Typhoon Rolly noong November 2020, at ang pinakasariwang bagyo na sumalanta sa maraming kababayan natin sa Bohol at Southern Leyte, ang bagyong Odette, noong December 2021. Isama na rin natin ang mga El Nino at La Nina na ating naranasan noon na nagdulot ng malaking epekto sa ating bansa. Naalala niyo pa ba sila? Kung oo, may tanong ako. Di kaya may kinalaman sila sa climate change? Kung ganun man ay isa lang ang masasabi ko. I can't! Pero honestly, di ko din alam ang sagot. Pero dahil sa aking pagagalugat gamit ang calculus book, napag-alaman ko na maaaring ilan lamang ito sa mga epekto ng climate change na sanhi ng human activities. Well, para sa kalaman ng lahat, ang mga bagyo, El Nino at La Nina ay normal lamang na fenomeno na nagaganap sa ating kapaligiran. Ngunit ayon sa artikulo ng E360 Digest noong 2019, ang climate change ay may kakaya makapagpalala sa formation ng mga malalalang El Nino at La Nina na tiyak na makakaapekto sa ating mga tao.
Oh no!
Oh no talaga, ganun din ang pag-aranas ng sobrang tagtuyot at malalakas na mga bagyo. Sandali, ito tingnan nyo. Ang litrato na iyan ay kuha mula sa bansang Kenya. At alam nyo ba ang dahilan kung bakit namatay ang 6 na giraffes na iyan? Dahil sa matagal na tagtuyot. Ang balita rito, ang 6 na hayop na ito ay nais lamang na uminom ng tubig sa isang pool of water nang sila ay matrap ng mabilis na matuyo ang tubig. At dagdag pa riyan, nasa mahigit na 4,000 pang mga giraffes ang nasa kritikal na kondisyon kung hindi magkakaroon ng sapat na rainfall sa naturang lugar. At isa lang ang masasabi ko, I can't! O nga pala, kuha lamang yan noong December 13, 2021. O ito pa, ito naman ang idinulot ng Super Typhoon Yolanda. Alam nyo ba na ito ang naitalang pinakamalakas na bagyo sa Pilipinas? At isa sa kinukonsiderang pinakamalakas na bagyo sa buong mundo na kumitil sa mahigit na 7,000 mga tao. Kasama na riyan ang mga nawawala. At lumika rin ito ng malalaking pinsala sa Pilipinas na siya nagdulot ng malaking epekto sa ating ekonomiya at nagtaya ng mahigit na 100 bilyong cost of destruction. At isa lang masasabi ko, I can't. Pero paano nga ba tayo nakakambag sa paglala ng climate change? Well, para sabihin ko sa iyo, ang mga simpleng bagay na ginagawa natin ay nakaka-apekto na pala sa ating kapaligiran. Tulad ng paggamit ng mga fossil fuel driven ng mga sasakyan, paggamit ng cellphone, sa pagsunog ng mga gamit, sa pagmamahal mo sa taong di ka mahal, char, paggamit ng mga plastic, at nako, marami pang iba. Nasisira na talaga ang mundo. Pero bakit wagas ka kung makatapon ng basura? Aso ka ba? Anong bakit? Bakit ka umiin sa kalsada? Pala-share ka sa FB ng environmental concerns tapos ganyan ka. Isa lang masasabi ko sa'yo. I can't. At dyan lamang magtatapos ang aking exposure. Siguraduhin makinig sa pag-uulat ng pangkatatlo upang mas lumawak ang ating kalaman sa usaping climate change. Dahil ito ay isang seryosong problema na dapat na binibigyang atensyon dahil tayo lang din naman ang magiging kawawa sa huli. Ikaw rin, kaya sabay-sabay nating sabihin, hashtag I can't is this anymore. Hashtag climate change is real. Hashtag hakbang tungo sa pagbabago. Hashtag huhu. Hashtag Baller Cutie. Bye-bye! Bye!
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. So, based from the video, you already have the insights of what topic we will be discussing, which is itong climate change nga, ano. And we will be focusing on the activities here in the Philippines that contribute to climate change. And these are the group's objectives in making this presentation. And it revolves around the idea of giving you some of the activities nga, and then how these activities impact and worsening climate change, and to enumerate some of the interventions in addressing this global issue as well as the recommendations. So you can check that out later.
Nagsisimula na. Alam ko naman yun na. Pero bakit? Bakit patuloy pa rin ginagawa? Kung sa duloy tayo lang din na mapapasama. Ilang dekada na ang nakalipas ngunit wala tayong natutuhan. Nasaksihan na natin ang libu-libong taong namatayan. Malalakas na bagyo na ang ating kinakarap. Nasaksihan na rin ang pagkagip sa ating mga pangarap. Tila ba sadyang makapalang takip sa inyong mga mata? Subukan nating sulipan ang ginagawa natin sa kapaligiran. Buksan mo ang dalawang mata. Buksan mo. Pagmasdan mo. Ito. Ito ang ating mga nagawa. Pero oo, nagiganti siya. Hindi na nga malayo ang ating darating. Pero sino? Sino ang sisisihin? Hindi. Sino ang hahakbang?
And now let us formally go over to the first part of the discussion proper, which is the introduction. Now, para mas malinaw ang ating pagkakaunawan sa mga susunod na talakayan, let us first differentiate these two terms because most often these two terms are used interchangeably. Well, in fact, meron silang pagkakaiba pero nabibilang naman sa parehong kategorya naman. And climate change versus global warming. When we say climate change, it covers a broader range or broader scope po, at isa lang ang global warming sa mga yun. So when human causes global warming, what happens is it tends to make the condition of climate change worse. So we could say rin na yung global warming is a factor that causes climate change. And global warming refers to the long-term warming of the planet, which causes nga yung mga nababalitaan natin na rising sea level, melting of polar ice caps, and mounting glaciers na solely bunga ng greenhouse gas effect. Later on, mas mapapaliwanag din yung greenhouse gas effect na yan. While climate change, on the other hand, mas marami siyang effect, hindi lang siya limited sa mga impacts na nagagawa ng global warming. And this encompasses shifts in flower or plant blooming seasons, migration patterns ng mga animals, precipitation, temperatures, and wind patterns, which will lead to formation of severe storms and typhoons, droughts, changing temperatures, at marami pang iba na siya nagigibanta naman sa kaligtasan nating mga tao.
And now, dadako na tayo kung ano na ba ang kalagayang estado ng climate change sa buong mundo o maging dito rin sa Pilipinas. Ayan. Medyo mabilis yung video, no? Pero explain ko na rin yung iba. So, sa video na pinanood at pinakita sa inyo, yung mga latest na epekto at pagbabago na dulot sa atin ng climate change. Ito lamang yung 2021, January up to September. Dahil na-post ito ng WMO or World Meteorological Organization nitong October. So yung una na imbis na mag-snow sa Greenland ay ano pong nangyari? Umulan. At yung pag-angat ng temperature na abot sa 50 degrees Celsius sa British at Columbia dahil sa heat wave sa Canada at mga forest fire and drought sa ibang bansa and yung mga naapektuhan na bodies of water. And lastly, yung katumbas na 1 month na ulan ay bumuhos agad sa China at ibang part ng Europe. Hindi ko na iisa-isahin ng lahat pero dahil pinakita naman ito, ang pinaka-point lang ay malala na or malubha na ang climate change at nangyayari ito at naapektuhan ng iba't ibang panig ng mundo at dapat na tayong mabahala dito. Yan. So nung ginagawa ko itong report ko ay talagang napaka-timely niya. So up to present siya hanggang ngayon. Dahil ang noong August 9, 2021 ay naglabas ng IPCC report or 6th assessment report ang naglabas si IPCC ng report, yung 6th assessment report niya o yung AR6 na tinatawag nila. Dahil ano muna ba si IPCC? Si IPCC ay isang organization na assigned ng UN o sa meaning niya na Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Ito po ay naka-assign sa pagre-research about sa climate change kasama ang maraming scientists at experts and 195 representative from different countries. And i-discuss ko yung mga ilang major points ng report nila. Although pinagbasihan ko na lang is yung summary. Dahil meron silang summary report na for policy makers na doon nagbe-base ang mga different government officials ng decision nila sa bawat action na gagawin about sa climate change. So sa first bullet, ito yung pinaka-point ng report. It is unequivocal that human actions made our world warmer. So, hindi na bago sa atin ang word na ito. Equivocal means hindi mo na maitatanggi talaga na ang tao ang pinakadahilan na rin ng climate change. Tayo na mismo ang nagpapalala dito. Hindi naman ito bago sa atin, pero ang pinakapunto dito ay kung dahil sa human activities ang climate change, ay pwede pa rin itong solusyonan ng mga tao, lalo na kung ito ay agad-agaran at hindi na lalong patatagalin. Dahil sa bawat segundong nasasayang ay mas mawawalan tayo ng pag-asa na maresolba ito. At sa second bullet ay simple lang sinasabi. Pero ibig sabihin, yung mga hindi normal na climate events tulad ng tagtuyot, kasasabihan ng heat wave or wildfire, or halimbawa naman kung saan ang dalawang climate events o tinatawag na rare events ay baka hindi na talaga maging rare or at lalo na maging mas madalas mangyari. At kung mangyari man ito ay posibleng mas matindi pa ito sa mga ine-expect natin. At ang panghuli ay sinasabi na pag hindi na solusyonan agad ang problema sa mataas na carbon dioxide emission ay mas tataas ng 1.5 hanggang 2 degrees ang average temperature ng mundo kumpara sa taong 1885 or during the before ng pre-industrial period. So I explain ko yan kung bakit ba tayo yung mabahala sa 1.5 na pagtaas ng temperature. Yan. Pinapakita ngayon yung graph na yung nakuha ko ito sa WMO ulit. Yung iba't ibang kulay na yan, ng line or trend line, yung mga data mula sa iba't ibang agency na nag-compute ng mean temperature globally. At halos magkakadikit lang sila. At kung makikita mo, ang trend ay pataas na pataas ito, natugma sa report na nilabas ng IPCC. Yan. Pinapakita na ngayon na tayo ay nag-increase sa 1 degree Celsius. Dito tayo mag-base sa may kanan na picture. So kapag ang temperature natin ay nag-increase ng 1 degrees, ay posibleng 5 beses na pwedeng mangyari ang mga extreme heat events. Yun yung mga heat wave, droughts, forest fire, yan. At pag tumaas naman tayo sa 1.5, ay pwede na maging 9 times na pwede nang mangyari ang mga extreme heat events tulad ng heat waves nga na tulad ko sinabi kanina or dun sa pinanood kanina. marami din pwedeng mangyari. O mag-waste naman tayo dito sa kaliwa, tulad ng pagkaubos ng mga species ng plants at insects. Damay na din ang mga coral reefs natin, lalo na pag tumindi ang pag-init sa bodies of water. And syempre, kaalinsabay na rin ito yung mas matinding mga climate events tulad ng bagyo. Now, dadako tayo dito sa bansa natin. Pero tingnan muna natin tong chart. Makikita dito yung mga top country na contributors. Nandyan yung China, Amerika, at ibang country. Pero ang Pilipinas, nasa pan 36 lang. At ibig sabihin ba nito na hindi naapektado or onti lang ang impact ng climate change sa Pinas? Hindi. Dahil ang totoo, tayo pa ang nagsasuffer. Ayan, makikita natin ang geographical condition ng Pilipinas na napapalibutan ng mga bodies of water. At alaman natin na ang bansa natin na napapalibutan ng dagat ang isa sa dahilan kung bakit delikado tayo sa climate change. At pag mas mabilis ang paglusaw ng yelo, pinapakita dito sa graph ang mga part ng bansa na vulnerable sa pagtaas ng sea level. At mas lalo na pag may bagyo na pwede din maging cause ng storm surge. Kung titignan nyo yung cluster 10 or the color orange dyan, malapit siya sa Northern Luzon. At dyan, ang cluster 10 ay nagpapakita ng pinakamataas na threat sa climate change. Ang makikita rin natin na malapit to sa mga lugar na taniman natin or sa mga agricultural provinces natin. Kaya nung nakaraan sa pinag-aralan natin sa rice, ay talagang alam naman natin or visible na apektado ang ating agricultural perspective when it comes to climate change. Yan. Sunod, ito yung screenshot sa report ng site ng Climate Links about sa climate change risk profile ng Pilipinas. At sinasabi lang dito na ang bansa ay vulnerable nga sa epekto ng climate change. Pagtaas ng sea level, mas madalas na weather events at hindi lang madalas dahil alam na natin, nasa Pacific Ring of Fire tayo. Talagang madalas tayong daanan ng bagyo. Pero yung hindi normal ay yung bagyo na dumadaan sa atin ay mas malakas at mas malubha ang pagdami ng buhos ng ulan. Ayan nga ang tinutukoy natin. Ito yung dalawang recent typhoons na puminsala sa bansa natin. Itong dalawang typhoons lang na ito ang epekto at nagpapakita ng dulot ng climate change. Kung saan ang mga typhoons ay mas lumalala at tumitindi pa. At alam naman natin na pag mas mainit ang panahon, mas mataas ang evaporation na nagdudulot ng mas madaming rainfall. And now, dito tayo sa Global Climate Risk Index ng 2000 hanggang 2019. So, hanggang 2019 lang dahil alam natin noong 2020 ay kung saan nag-stop ang buong sistema ng mundo nang nagkaroon ng pandemic. So, ayan, pan-top 4 tayo sa mga bansa na nasa risk ng climate event tulad ng typhoon, tropical cyclones, at iba pa ng mga climate events. At alaman natin na ang climate events na tulad na diniscuss kanina ay palala ng palala. Pero kung titignan nyo yung mga bansa kanina na nasa top contributor tulad ng US, China, and other developed countries ay wala sa top 10 na vulnerable sa climate risk. At ma-realize natin na bansa natin ang naapektuhan ng climate change. At kung babalik din tayo dun sa IPCC report and dun sa video na pinanood galing sa WMO, ay maliit na part lamang yun na nadulot ng climate change. At sabi nga rin nila, maglalabas sila ngayong 2022 ng report about sa kung paano susolusyonan ang mabilisang pagbawas sa carbon emissions. Pero wala pang date. At ang pinaka-point dito, malubha ang climate change, kailangan na natin ng aksyon at dapat lahat tayo ay maging aware sa kung anong nangyayari sa ating mundo. At ngayon, dadako naman tayo sa mga iba't ibang aktibidad dito sa Pilipinas na nagdudulot rin sa climate change.
Greetings everyone. It is an honor and privilege to share with you today about how deforestation here in our country contributes to climate change. By the way, I'm Carl David Sibakiran, will be doing the reporting. Mahalaga ba ang ating forest? What is a forest nga ba? First, I would like to discuss with you about what is forest. So, ano nga ba ito? According kay Google, ang forest is a piece of land with many trees. Mahalaga ba ang forest? Our forest ay isa sa mga pinaka-importanting resources na meron tayo. Bakit siya naging isa sa mga pinaka-importante? Dahil nagpo-provide ito sila ng clean air, source of food, construction materials, etc. More importantly, forest ay ang major line of defense natin against climate change. Kasi a single tree can absorb as much as 48 pounds of carbon dioxide each year, making them the most effective CO2 scrubbing machine we have. Bakit ang forest ang ating major line of defense? People and most animals breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide, and plants use CO2 to grow. CO2 also helps regulate the temperature of our planet dahil ang CO2 ay isa sa mga main greenhouse gases. So without CO2, our planet would be too cold for us to live on. So kapag wala daw CO2, magiging sobrang lamig daw ang ating planet. Pero bakit may CO2 naman tayo sa atmosphere ngayon, pero ba't ang cold niya sa akin? CO2 acts like the glass in a greenhouse by keeping some of the heat from the sun trapped inside the Earth's atmosphere. So what is deforestation? Why deforestation can lead to climate change? According kay Google, deforestation is the removal of a forest or a stand of trees from a land that is then converted to non-forest use. Ibig sabihin, uubusin nila ang trees sa isang lugar. So anong connect ng deforestation sa climate change? Di ba sabi ko nga, a single tree can absorb as much as 48 pounds of CO2. Ano mangyayari sa CO2 when trees are cut down? Lahat ng nakastored na carbon will be released into the atmosphere. So kapag nag-increase ang amount ng CO2 sa atmosphere natin, mas madaming heat ng sun ang matatrap inside our planet's atmosphere. And our planet ay magiging mas mainit yung temperature. So what are the causes of deforestation? Unang-una, ito ay natural causes, tulad ng fires, parasites, and floods. Dahil sa mga ito, nauubos din ang ating forest. Pangalawa is agriculture. Commercial and industrial agriculture tulad ng field crops and livestock ay nagkakos ng around 40% of forest loss for the search for space to grow food like soybeans, palm oil, beef, rice, etc. Lastly, urbanization, like houses, infrastructures like roads and railways, and other facilities. These are some of the causes of deforestation.
Ngayon naman magtungo tayo sa mga dapat nating malaman ukol sa paninigarilyo at kung paano ito nakakaapekto sa ating klima. First of all, what is a cigarette? According to Oxford Dictionary, cigarette is a thin cylinder finely cut tobacco rolled paper for smoking. Ito ay gawa mula sa mga tobacco leaf na nilagyan ng karagdagang upang mapanatili ang kalidad nito sa loob ng mahabang panahon at kasama na rin dito ang paglalagay ng iba't ibang lasa na siyang trademark ng iba't ibang brand ng sigarilyo. Ito ay nakabalot sa cigarette paper na dinugtungan ng filter sa unahan na siyang magiging upos. Paano nga ating klima? Number 1, cigarettes contain carbon monoxide. Ito ang isa sa mga pinakamabibigat na epekto ng paninigarilyo sa kalikasan. Carbon monoxide may not be that harmful to our atmosphere alone, but this is a key factor triggering other air pollutants such as ozone and carbon dioxide. Maaari nitong mabago ang ratio ng dalawang klase ng ozone sa ating atmosphere, ang protecting ozone at ang harmful ozone, na mula sa 90% ozone in the stratosphere at 10% troposphere ay pwedeng bumaba ang level ng ozone na nasa stratosphere kesa sa nasa troposphere, na isa sa mga pinaka-iniiwasang mangyari dahil nakakapagdulot ito ng mas malalang global warming. Number 2, cigarettes are manufactured. Halos lahat ng produktong sigarilyo ngayon ay dumadaan sa makinarya, mula sa pagbalot ng dinurog ng mga dahon ng tobacco, patungo sa pagsisilid ng mga stick sa kanilang mga kaha. Ang resulta, nakakapag-emit ang prosesong iyon na naglalaman ng greenhouse gas na nagpapalala rin sa global warming. Number 3. Cigarettes cause smoking-related fires. Hindi na bago sa ating pandinig ang pagkakaroon ng sunog dahil sa kapabayaan sa paggamit ng mga bagay na sinisindihan tulad ng kandila at upos ng sigarilyo. Maaari itong magdulot ng malawakang forest fire o kaya naman ay makasunog ng mga tirahan na isa ring tinitinang dahilan sa paglala ng global warming dahil sa malagong usok na ipinadadala nito sa ating atmosphere. Dumako naman tayo sa paggamit ng sigarilyo sa Pilipinas. Among ASEAN countries, the Philippines ranked third with the most cigarette sticks produced. In 2020, the country sold over 70 million cigarette sticks. Sa uling tala naman noong taong 2018, mayroong 1.1 billion smokers globally. And may 122 million smokers sa mga ASEAN country at 16.5 million naman sa Pilipinas. 41.9% ay binubuo ng mga kalalakihan at ang 5.8% naman ay binubuo ng mga kababaihan. Kaya naman noong 2015, 181.5 million ang nakokonsumong sigarilyo ng tao bawat araw sa Pilipinas. Sadyang malaki na naidulot ng paninigarilyo sa umiinit nating klima, mula pa lang sa pagpoproduce patungo sa pagsisindi.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm asked to discuss about the fossil fuels and how it contributes to climate change. This is Chia Chi Chen speaking. Burning of fossil fuels. What are fossil fuels? Fossil fuels are formed from the decomposition of bird carbon-based organisms that died millions of years ago. They create carbon-rich deposits that are extracted and burned for energy. They are non-renewable and currently supplying around 80% of the world's energy. They are also used to make plastic, still in a huge range of products. There are certain kinds of fossil fuels: coal, oil, and natural gas. Coal is the dirtiest of the fossil fuels and responsible for over 0.3 Celsius of the 1 Celsius increase in global average temperatures, making it the single largest source of global temperature rise. Next is the oil releases a huge amount of carbon when burned, approximately a third of the world's total carbon emissions. There have also been a number of oil spills in recent years that have a devastating impact on our ocean's ecosystem. Lastly is the natural gas. Natural gas is often promoted as a cleaner energy source than coal and oil. However, it is still a fossil fuel and accounts for a fifth of the world's total carbon emissions. Effects of burning of fossil fuels. When fossil fuels are burned, they release large amounts of carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas, into the air. Greenhouse gases trap heat in our atmosphere, causing global warming. The average global temperature has increased by 1 Celsius. Warming above 1.5 degrees Celsius is further. Before the actual day of industrialization, the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere was about 0.28%, which is enough to keep us warm. When fossil fuels are burned, nag-add pa siya ng mataas na porsyento ng carbon dioxide sa existing na carbon dioxide sa atmosphere. Ngayon, almost 50% na mas malaki ang quantity ng carbon dioxide kaysa noong wala pang mga factories or any means na makapagpapataas ng carbon dioxide. And dahil sa natatrap din ng carbon dioxide sa atmosphere, nagdudulot ito ng mas mainit na temperature. So, isa sa effects ng burning of fossil fuels is the rising of sea levels. The oceans then absorb the majority of this heat. As water becomes warmer, it expands. This results in ocean levels rising worldwide. So, bigyan ko kayo ng example. Sino ba dito yung nakapagluto na ng tosino? Paki-raise nga ng hand. Wala akong tatanong. Range nyo lang. Yan. So, meron na nakapagluto. So, sa baba nyo na, baka mangala eh. Yan na. Sa pagluto niya ng tosino, di ba naglalagay ng tubig para mas lumambot yung tosino? And sa pagkakaalam ko, para medyo mabawasan yung tamis ng kahapong di magbabalik. Ay, ng tosino pala, sorry. Ewan ko kung napapansin nyo rin, pero napapansin ko sa process ng pagluluto ng tosino, nag-expand yung tubig habang iniinit mo siya, which is tinatawag na thermal expansion. in a way na nagbabago yung volume ng matter in response to absorption of heat. Yung source ng heat is nagbibigay ng heat energy sa molecules ng water and it will eventually cause the molecules to move. This free movement of the molecules causes the expansion of liquid. Ganon din sa idea ng burning of fossil fuels, causing the sea level to rise. Nang dahil sa carbon dioxide at iba pang heat-trapping gases na natatrap sa atmosphere, na-absorb ng ocean ang init nito na nagre-result sa pagtaas na level ng tubig. So next naman, isa pang effects ng burning of fossil fuels is the extreme weather. So when fossil fuels are burned for electricity, heat, and transportation, carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas that traps solar radiation, it is released into our atmosphere. Massive increase in carbon dioxide, methane, and other greenhouse gas emissions have caused the temperature on our planet to rise.
Next one is the continuous utilization of old vehicles. So, dito sa Pilipinas, marami tayong nakikita ang mga sasakyan. At kung mapapansin natin, yung karamihan sa mga sasakyan na yun ay sobrang luma na. At hindi lang po limited sa mga jeepneys yan. Nandiyan na rin yung mga motor, mga tricycle. Nakulang na lang iparinig yung kanilang pag-aaral sa buong world. Well, anyway, the constant usage of old vehicles can greatly contribute to climate change through the following. First is they are fossil fuel driven. Since they are fossil fuel driven nga, mas may dahilan yung mga fossil fuel manufacturing industry to produce more fossil fuels. At alam naman natin nag-under siya ng pag-burn sa production nito na siya nag-emit ng CO2. Tapos pag nagamit pa siya ng mga sasakyanan, another emission ulit yan ng CO2 dahil naman sa process ng combustion. And old vehicles tend to exude more carbon dioxide dahil nga luma na sila at hindi na nagpa-function normal yung kanilang engines, which drives the production of mas maitim na usok, mas visible na yung inimit nilang ng kanilang tambucho. Tapos mapapansin natin na nagiging foggy yung kapaligiran kasi yung napupuno na ng usok dahil sa mga libo-libong mga sasakyan na ginagamit. Tapos ayan po, one of the main reasons why air pollution is rampant here in the Philippines. And then nagko-contribute siya ng climate change through global warming, through greenhouse gas effect. So ano ba itong greenhouse gas effect? Next slide po. So by definition, greenhouse gas effect is the process that occurs when gases in Earth's atmosphere trap the sun's heat. So in order for us to visualize this, let's take a look at this. Consider this representation. We have the Earth's atmosphere, animals, people, vehicles, and factories. During the day, the sun makes the Earth warm. And during the night, it releases sun's heat back to the atmosphere. Now, there are pollutants that animals produce, which is called the methane. Human vehicles and factories emit CO2 and other elements present in the atmosphere such as water vapor and nitrous oxide. These gases are called greenhouse gases. And when they are abundant in the atmosphere, they actually trap the heat which makes the Earth warmer. At ayan ang sanhi ng global warming. Pero don't get me wrong dahil ang greenhouse effect ay hindi masama because it is one of the reasons why Earth is capable of sustaining life. Without it, sinasabi ko na baka ang temperatura ng mundo is negative 14 or 17 degrees Celsius lang pababa at isipin na lang natin kung anong magagawa natin sa ganung temperatura, di ba? But the problem is the speed. Sobrang bilis ng pagtaas ng temperatura ng mundo. Ayon sa datos na aking nakalap, okay lang naman daw na tumaas ang temperatura ng mundo from 1 to 2 degrees Celsius by the end of the century, that is 2100. Pero nalalapit pa lang tayo sa 2030, pero ang temperatura na ng mundo is tumaas na from 1.5 degrees Celsius. So greenhouse gas effect is not bad, but the problem is the speed. Sobrang bilis nating pinapainit ang mundo. Gaya ng pag-init natin sa ulo ng ating mama. Char. So itong data naman ay nilabas ng Climate Wings and Our World in Data ay nagpapakita ng annual CO2 emission in 2012, which aggregated to 88.41 million tons of CO2. And sa overall greenhouse gas emission of the Philippines in 2012, 50% po doon is nagmula sa mga energy sectors. Kasama po dyan yung mga planta, mga sasakyanan, and 33% from agriculture. Bakit? dahil po sa tinatawag natin na food system. Yung food system po is yung kabuuang tinatak ng ating pagkain from the input stage, production, manufacturing, market, and then consumption hanggang sa hanggang sa ilabas na ng katawan natin. Well, anyway, then kasama din po yun kasi yung mga farms, di ba nga Pasag said, many must produce pollutants called methane. So agriculture is nakakasama pala talaga sa kapaligiran. And then the other 13% are from industrial processes, waste, land use change, and forestry sectors. This is the annual carbon dioxide emission from 1907 to 2020. And we can obviously see how much CO2 we can produce. Yung pagbaba po na yan, ayan po yung nag-start na yung pandemic, which naging limited yung mga sasakyan na mga trabaho. Pero kung mapapansin natin, bahagyang pagbaba lang yan po. And kung susumahin, parang buong bansa po yung naka-frozen nun dahil nga po diba, sa pangamba sa COVID-19. And what if na lang kung walang pandemic? Sobrang laki po siguro na tinaas ng ating CO2 emission. And then lastly, ito naman po yung world CO2 emission as of 2020. And China pa rin po yung great contributor of CO2. So, di na po nakakapagtaka yan dahil di ba nga po, tinaguri ang world polluted country ang bansang China.
So next up po is ang power plants. So what is a power plant? A power plant is an industrial facility that uses primary energy to create electricity. To supply electricity to the electrical grid for the society's electrical demands, most power plants utilize one or more generators that convert mechanical energy into electrical energy. Merong ding iba't ibang types ng power plants. Ito ang thermal at renewable power plants. Under thermal power plants, nandito ang mga fossil fuel power plants, nuclear power plants at solar thermal power plants. Under naman sa renewable power plants ay ang mga hydroelectric facilities, wind turbines, and solar panels. So, power plants in the Philippines. 28 coal-fired power plants are currently in operation throughout the country with 9.8 gigawatts of total installed capacity. Mukha mang hindi ganun karami pero masasabi nating mayroong massive impact ang bawat coal power plant kung sabay-sabay itong tumatakbo. Dahil dito, nag-issue noong October of 2020 na patitigilin muna ang pagpapagawa ng coal-fired power plants, ngunit papayagan pa rin ang mga proyekto na na-approve bago mangyari ang pag-i-issue ng moratorium, which is about 22 proposed power plants din. Pinatigil ang pagpapagawa ng coal-fired power plants para ma-expand ang paggamit ng renewables for both environmental and reliability purposes. The 621 megawatts Bataan facility, the first and only nuclear power plant in the country, would not be commissioned despite allotting $2.3 billion on its construction. Although the project is currently being revisited, it's been nearly 35 years since the Philippines mothballed the country's only nuclear power plant, declaring the 621 megawatt Bataan facility would not be commissioned despite the country spending $2.3 billion. That decision is being revisited as the nation looks for a way to increase its power generation capacity, in a country where demand for electricity is soaring as part of an economic expansion. In summary, gustong balikan ang pagpapatakbo ng 35-year decommissioned nuclear power plant dahil naiisip nila na ito ang paraan para mapataas lalo ang power generation capacity. So the Philippines has about 7 geothermal fields that can provide approximately 12% of the country's energy, with plans to almost double capacity by 2040. Kahit bumaba ang global rankings ng Pilipinas in terms of geothermal fields, noong 2018, kilala pa rin ang bansa bilang isa sa mga top producer ng geothermal power sa buong mundo dahil located ang bansa sa may Ring of Fire. Dahil dito, nagsagawa ng exploration surveys ang ilang power companies on geothermal exploration noong taong iyon. Kahit may potential sa geothermal resources ang bansa, mayroong pa ring iilang factors na nakaapekto sa pag-decline ng investments tulad na lamang ng privatized energy sector, mabagal at mahabang proseso sa permits, at kakulangan ng potential investors na willing mag-take ng risk. How significant is a power plant in today's society? As what I have said earlier, a power plant is an industrial facility that uses primary energy to create electricity, which is isa sa mga kailangan natin ngayong panahon. Maaaring may mag-isip na pwede naman tayong magkaroon ng source of electricity without using a power plant, pero that would be for small scale lang. For provinces na sobrang layo na hindi nakakakuha ng sapat na electricity, constructing a power plant there would be one of the options para maraming tao ang makaka-benefit. Additionally, as time goes by, lubhang nakakaapekto yung mga lumang power plants lalo na yung mga coal-fired. In today's society, kung magko-construct pa ng power plants, dapat ay lumipat na tayo fully sa pagpapagawa ng renewable power plants tulad ng wind turbines para hindi mapinsala ang kapaligiran. Next ay ang effects ng power plants sa environment. First, air pollution. Carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxide, and sulfur oxide are three gases that are released in the atmosphere by thermal power plants. Carbon dioxide is one of the main gases that is released from the burning of the fossil fuels, same as nitrogen and sulfur dioxide. While it is technically not a greenhouse gas, it is known to have indirect effects to the atmosphere because it can affect the scattering of incoming sunlight, the formation of clouds, and precipitation patterns. Excuse me. Next is water pollution. Water is used by power plants for cooling, which is then sent back to the river that can result in thermal or heat pollution. This plume of warmer water can create ice-free pockets in winter, which can attract and then trap many species when the flow slows or stops. In summer, the hot water can add to the eutrophication or oxygen deficiency in the river, choking fish and aquatic life. Heavy metals and chlorine in cooling water discharges are also having a negative effect on river life. Lastly, global warming that impacts climate change. When coal is burnt, it mostly contains carbon, which combines with oxygen in the air to form carbon dioxide, a heat-trapping gas. Coal is mostly carbon, which when burned, reacts with oxygen in the air to produce carbon dioxide. When released into the atmosphere, carbon dioxide works like a blanket, warming the Earth above normal limits. Let us now move on to the second part of our presentation, which is the social impacts of climate change to be discussed by Hanson and Baki.
Now let's talk about socio-economic effects of climate change. In agriculture, specifically sa impact ng El Nino at La Nina to farmers. Alam natin lahat na ang El Nino causes drought and water shortages, while La Nina naman ay nagke-create ng water abundance, including flooding. Pero alam nyo ba na dati sabi ng mga farmers ay nakakatulong ang La Nina at El Nino sa kanila nung hindi pa masyadong malala ang La Nina at El Nino? Nang dahil sa climate change ay lumala ang effects ng El Nino at La Nina, kaya nagkakaroon ang ating mga farmers na mga kabawasan ng crop planting areas, delay planting seasons, and lower crop fields. And yung mga animals nagkakaroon ng sakit dahil sa climate change din. Kaya ngayon ay may konting pagbabagong ginagawa ang ating farmers na at meron sila mga solution para malabanan itong lumalalang El Nino at La Nina. Invest in high efficiency appliances daw, kaso karamihan sa ating mga farmers ay walang budget. Kaya X na itong solution na ito. Installing rain collection systems, konting farmers may ganito. Gumagawa sila ng sarili nilang rain collection system kaysa bumili. At lastly, during drought, ito ginagawa ng mga farmers ngayon, ang pag-rotate ng crops. Ito ay ang pag-rotate ng crops ay nag-i-increase ng amount of water that enters the soil.
Pangalawa naman ay ang lumalalang pagbugso ng kalamidad, dulot ng mga tinatawag na mga anthropogenic greenhouse gases na sanhi ng industrialisasyon tulad ng carbon dioxide ay nagiging mas mainit na ang mundo. Resulta nito ay ang pagtaas din ng temperatura ng ating mga karagatan na siyang dahilan ng mas malalakas na mga bagyo. At kapag mas malakas ang mga bagyo, mas maraming bahay at infrastruktura ang mapipinsala. Maraming tao ang mawawalan ng tirahan at kabuhayan dahil bukod sa lakas ng hangin ay nagdudulot din ito ng matinding pagbaha. Dahil dito, kakailanganin nilang lumikas sa mas mataas na lugar. Doon na magsisimula ang tinatawag nating adaptation, na kung saan mag-a-adjust ang mga tao sa ibang lugar at mababago ang ilan o karamihan sa kanilang mga nakasanayan.
Manila is at risk of becoming underwater city due to the rising sea level by year 2050. Ito ay dahil ulit sa climate change. Dahil sabi nga, climate change increases cold or hot temperatures. Kung magkakaroon ng sobrang init na panahon at matunaw ang polar ice caps, tataas ang ating sea level. Kung tataas ang ating sea level, may possibility na mag-submerge ang Metro Manila dahil ang Philippines ay isang archipelago at maraming tubig ang nakabalot dito. Kino-consider kasi na coastal area ang Manila at iba pang cities. Kung magkaroon man ng sea level rise, ang coastal areas muna ang unang lulubog. At kung lulubog man ang Manila in 2050, magaganap ang relocation ng mga Manila residents and it will carve a great mark on our social cultural aspects.
At ngayon, dadako naman tayo sa mga ethical at moral concerns na kakibat ng climate change. Ang una po ay climate change is a human right crisis. Pero paano? Alam naman natin na lahat ng tao ay may karapatan na mabuhay ng payapa at ligtas. Kung ganon, ang carbon emitting countries ay na-violate na ang rights na ito. At alam naman natin kung sa atin mismo dito sa Pilipinas ay tayo rin mismo ang naglalagay sa atin sa peligro dahil nakaka-apekto rin tayo sa lalong paglala ng climate change. At alam natin na ang climate change ay nagdudulot ng paglala ng mga bagyo at iba pa. At pag mayroong mga bagyo, ay lagi nating nababalitaan na mayroong namamatay o nasasaktan at napipinsala. Kaya ang climate change ay isa sa human rights crisis. Sunod ay ang obligasyon natin sa kapaligiran. Ito ay nakapaloob na sa mga iba't ibang philosophical views and lalo na rin sa moral issue natin. Dahil kung tayo na Kristiyano or kung ikaw ano man ang iyong religion na naniniwala ka sa Diyos ay na Diyos ang may gawa ng mundo at moral responsibility natin sa planeta natin na alagaan ito at ingatan pati na din ang mga species na kasama natin na naninirahan sa mundo. Pero kung nakikita natin ngayon ay hindi natin nagagampanan ito at nagagawa. Kung bagkos ay kabaliktaran, mas lalo natin itong nasisira at ito ang nakikita natin ang paghihiganti sa atin ng kapaligiran natin. Pangatlo ay ito po siguro yung marahil na pinakamahirap na solusyonan na part. Dahil kung titignan natin ang global perspective, ay walang government na may jurisdiction na katumbas sa kung gaano kalaking problema ang climate change. Sinabi nga kanina sa introduction na ang climate change ay mas broad o kumbaga global ang climate change. Pero wala tayong government or authority pang buong mundo. Meron tayo sa bawat country natin na gobyerno na karapatan na pupunta ng mga tao nito sa bawat border. Pero wala tayong responsibilidad na pakialaman ng ibang bansa tungkol sa issue na ito. Kumbaga, alam natin na ang China, US, and most developed countries ang top emitter ng CO2. Pero wala tayong magagawa para pakialaman ng ibang bansa maliban na lang kung makikipagkaisa sila na bawasan yung ginagamit nilang fossil fuels. At base na rin sa pag-research ko, naging ethical issue ang climate change sa way na bago natin talaga masolusyonan ang climate change ay kailangan marami tayong baguhin sa sistema ng ating pamumuhay, hindi lang dito sa Pilipinas, kundi sa pangbuong mundo.
Para sa yugto ng diskusyon, ito ang CGM. Chen, gitarahin mo.
stop chopping down our trees, stop using plastic things, carpool and dark EVs, and give back to the world that we given. Cut down the milk and meat, green power the lights and heat. Sing the song on repeat as we do our part to the world that we live in. Hey, it's Earth, the planet that we're on, you know, but it's not feeling so well. Its temperature's rising, species are dying, floods, droughts, and fires no longer surprising. It's losing trees and its islands slowly disappear. It's getting harder and harder to make a home for us here. They're making those greenhouse gases, trapping heat in the atmosphere. They come from cars and plastics, cows and factories here. They're burning oil and coal and all that natural gas, releasing carbon dioxide and methane, and releasing them fast. We stop chopping down our trees, stop using plastic things, for carpool and drive EVs, and give back to earth we've been given. Cut down the milk and meat, green power the lights and heat. We sing the song on repeat as we do our part for the world that we live in.
And now we are entering part 3, which is the current interventions and solutions for climate change.
Ngayon naman po, ating pag-usapan ang mga dapat gawin o solution sa deforestation o ang tinatawag na pagkaubos ng mga puno sa ating kagubatan. Madaming solution upang mapaglabanan ang deforestation. Pero reforestation at afforestation lang muna ang aking may babahagi dahil ito ang nakita kong pinaka-best solution sa lahat. Ang reforestation at afforestation according kay Google ay human activities na yung non-forest land gagawing forested land. So noong 1977, nagkaroon po ng batas na nilagdaan ni President Ferdinand Marcos, our 10th President of the Philippines. Yun yung Presidential Decree number 1153 na nagre-require magtanim ng isang plant every month for 5 consecutive years by every citizen of the Philippines. So failing to do so ay may punishment or penalty na matatanggap. Pero nung dumating ang time ni President Corazon Aquino noong 1987, lahat ng ito ay nabago. Dahil sabi niya, ang pagpaplant ng puno can be achieved without compulsion and the penalties. Bali yung law na ginawa ni President Ferdinand Marcos ay compulsory at yung kay President Corazon Aquino naman ay optional or voluntary. At dahil naging voluntary, mahigit 50% ng citizens of the Philippines stop planting 1 tree every month. Noong time naman ni President Benigno Aquino III, na-establish ang NGP or yung National Greening Program na kung saan ang goal ng programang ito ay magplant ng 1.5 billion trees in 1.5 hectares of land from 2011 to 2016. In 2015, the program was expanded to cover all the remaining unproductive, denuded, and degraded forest lands. And each period of implementation extended from 2016 to 2028. However, NGP has failed to meet 88.17% of its target for the period of 2011 to 2019. Habang gumagawa ng paraan ang ating government, pwede tayong kumilos upang makatulong na din. Tulad ng mag-start tayo by being conscious of what we eat and try to avoid processed food and meat limit intake. Pwede rin tayong sumama sa mga reforestation projects, but due to the pandemic, we can plant our own tree at home or land. or by donating to the organization called One Tree Planted Philippines. Magpa-plant sila ng isang tree sa bawat dollar na madodonate natin. And we can also try to reduce the consumption of paper. Lagi nating tandaan na ang forest natin are like lungs of the world because it produces oxygen and stores billions of tons of carbons every year. Kung wala na ang forest, ano na mangyayari sa ating mundo? Kaya't iwasan natin ang pagputol ng mga puno.
Narito na ang mabawasan ang pagbilis ng paglala ng kaso ng global warming dulot ng paninigarilyo. Una, ang pagsasabatas ng Republic Act No. 9211 o mas kilala sa tawag na Tobacco Regulation Act of 2003 na nililimitahan ng mga lugar kung saan pwedeng gumamit at magbenta ng sigarilyo. Ayon sa batas ay bawal manigarilyo sa mga indoor public places, workplaces, land transport, aircraft at mga transport terminal. Ngunit hindi kabilang dito ang mga bar at nightclub. Kasama rin sa batas ang paglalagay ng health warning tulad ng mga sakit na maaaring makuha sa paninigarilyo na dapat ay ng sigarilyo mas mura kaysa sa mas mahal. Sa pagtaas ng mga bilihin, kasabay rin noon ang pagtaas ng presyo ng sigarilyo at narito ang tala ng mga presyo taong 2023. So kung nakikita natin dito sa larawan, 2013 hanggang mas maging mahal ang cigarette stock by machine if the net retail price Yan, kung nakikita natin ang pagbabago ng presyo sa 2 litrato, talaga namang mas pipiliin mo na lang na ibigin ng pagkain yung pera kaysa sa gastusin mo pa sa sigarilyo dahil sa sobrang mahal niya. Pangatlo naman ay ang religion. Marami mga tao ang nahinto sa kanilang mga bisyo magmula ng sumapi sa kanilang relihiyon. Narito ang isang verse mula sa Biblia. 1 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 21. Just because something is technically legal, mean that it's spiritually appropriate. If I went out doing whatever I thought I could get by with, I'd be a slave to my whims. Sinasabi lamang ng verse na ito na hindi lahat ng legal ay mabuti. Ang paninigarilyo ay isa ring uri ng pag-abuso sa ating sagradong katawan na ipinagkam sa atin ng Panginoon, kaya't marapat lang iwasan. Panghuli naman ay ang No Smoking Month event, na kung saan ay ipinatutupad ang no smoking policy sa loob ng isang buwan, May 31st hanggang sa katapusan. Layunin din ito na impluwensyahan ng mga kabataan ukol sa masamang epekto ng paninigarilyo at himukin ng mga ito na huwag nang sumubok. Bukod doon ay may mga kaakibat din itong aktibidad na may kaugnayan sa tema ng programa.
So, ngayon naman ay dumako tayo sa mga solusyon sa patuloy na pagsusunog ng fossil fuels. Ang una ay ang Climate Change Act of 2009, Republic Act 9729, signed by the 14th President of Philippines, Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo. Together with her was Loren Legarda, the law author, Senate President Juan Ponce Enrile, and other congressmen. It was enacted on July 27, 2009. It allows mainstreaming of the climate change into government formulation of programs and projects, plans and strategies and policies, creation of climate change commission, and establishment of framework strategy and program for climate change. Climate Change Act has the following objectives: to protect the right of the people to a balanced and healthy ecology, to integrate risk reduction measures into climate change adaptation plans, for development and poverty reduction, and lastly, to develop strategies and other development tools and techniques. In here, the citizens will be able to exercise their right to know and make informed decisions to protect their families. Siyempre, para malaman natin ng climate hazards or ng climate change. It is to secure and improve the state of living of the people that are not having enough money to meet basic needs, including food, clothing, and shelter. So next is the Yogo Framework for Action 2005. The Yogo Framework for Action was adopted in 2005 at the World Conference on Disaster Reduction, held in Kobe, Hyogo, Japan, and is now being used here in the Philippines because of the continuous effect of climate change. Yoga Framework for Action is the global blueprint for disaster risk reduction efforts. It uses knowledge, innovation, and education to build a culture of safety and resiliency. Yoga Framework for Action covers the following objectives: to make disaster risk reduction a priority. Next is to know the risk and take action, to build understanding and awareness, to reduce risk, to be prepared and ready to act. So, disaster risk reduction is a top priority as we seek to hold back the tide of rising economic and human losses, to protect the lives and livelihoods of communities and individuals who are most vulnerable to disasters or emergencies. By knowing the risks, we can achieve major reductions in disaster losses. Individuals may also strengthen their capacities to absorb and recover from disasters. And for us to reduce mortality risk associated by taking actions, decisions that we make every day about our transport and diets can help reduce carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions, which causes climate change. It is important that we understand and be prepared on how the climate is changing. Kailangan natin ma-reduce ang risk ng climate change kasi it will cause a significant harm to the health of people and their communities. Para rin hindi na magkaroon ng possible na pananalasa nito sa ating environment. Sorry. So next is the stop cutting down trees. So tropical forest trees such as green plants are in need of carbon dioxide paired with light to make sugars para lumaw sila. Alam naman natin na ang mga punot halaman na ito ay nag-absorb ng carbon dioxide from the atmosphere during photosynthesis. Pero kapag maraming puno ang pinuputol, yung mga na-store na carbon dioxide ay marirelease ulit as CO2. And dahil nababawasan yung mga nag-hold sa CO2, mas suminit din yung temperature natin. Burning fossil fuels in cars releases so ang carpooling po is the sharing of car journeys so that more than one person travels in a car and prevents the need for others to drive to a location themselves. So this burning fossil fuels in cars releases carbon dioxide at iba pang greenhouse gases. It is the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions. Siyempre, kung less ka gumamit ng kotse, kung meron man, mas makakabuti pa yon sa environment at gumamit na lang kayo ng iisang vehicle. Next is to stop or lessen the use of plastics. Sunlight and heat cause the plastic to release powerful greenhouse gases, leading to an alarming feedback. As our climate changes, the planet gets hotter and plastics breaks down into more methane and ethylene, increasing the rate of climate change and so perpetuating the cycle. Lastly is the use of electric-driven vehicles. Besides lower fuel cost, electric vehicles also serve as a greener alternative to gas or diesel vehicles. By eliminating exhaust, they can reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This advantage helps businesses stay sustainable and compliant with government guidelines.
So as for the continuous utilization of all vehicles, ipinatupad naman po ang Republic Act number 9367 or the Biofuels Act of 2006. So this was established to minimize the use of fossil fuels in the Philippines and also to reduce our dependence in terms of fuel needs in the country. Ang kagandahan po dyan is direkta po na-address ang ating environmental concerns. Why? Because as we have discussed in chemistry po, biofuels are made by materials we see in the environment. So, kukuha tayo ng materials na produce various forms of biofuels. But here in the Philippines, ang ginagamit na biofuel relative to the law is what we call the coconut biodiesel or coco biodiesel. So, why coconut? Dahil ang Philippines is known to have an abundant resources of coconuts po. And isa pang kagandahan sa law na yun is nakakalikha siya ng trabaho sa ating mga coconut farmers. Sa law din po kasi na to, pinipermit na increase in biodiesel blend from 2% to 5%. So what does that imply? Biodiesel po kasi is bine-blend at ginagamit in various concentrations. We have 3 categories, the B5, B20, and B100 po. And ang pagtaas pa ng blend ay isang hakbang na rin upang mas ma-advertise ng Pilipino ng mga mamayan sa ating bansa. Next is the Jeepney Modernization Program of the DOTR, Department of Transportation. So ito alam naman natin to, a program intended to provide a safe, environment-friendly, and efficient public transportation service. Marami siyang ethical concerns, but mamaya, explain natin yun. And next slide. According to the resolution, here are the highlights po. 15 years old and above PUV or public utility vehicles or PUJ, public utility GPs, will not be permitted to operate and will not issue a license for public vehicle operators. So, pag medyo matanda na talaga yung mga jeep, hindi na siya pinapayagang ma-i-operate sa ating roads po. And then, encompasses modern devices for security and safety purposes. Kasama po dyan ang speed limiter, CCTV, dashboard camera, GPS, and meron siyang features which can accommodate PWD. So, PWD friendly na po siya. Meron siyang Wi-Fi, comfortable seats, and meron din, nag-allow din sila ng standing passengers, pero nililimitahan lang po from 5 to 8 person. And then, powered by either Euro 4 engine or electric engine with the solar panels on the roof. So, tatlo po kasing variety yan based on my research. Merong fossil fuel-driven or fuel-driven, electric-driven, and the hybrid one, the combination of the two. So, yung Euro 4, isa siyang engine which has cleaner emission. The combustion engines have low emissions and it has better compatibility with current fuels used today. It has longer life, and most especially, it's innovative na. Next po. So, ito naman yung mga ethical concerns. Anti-poor po siya in a sense na sobrang mahal po kasi nung jeepney. Nagko-cost po siya ng 1.5 million and hindi pa po kasama doon yung annual interests at yung mga karagdagang bayad pa. So, sa kabuuan magiging 2 million siya. So, sobrang hirap nun. But, meron naman pong subsidy na binibigay ang government with the help of DBP or the Development Bank of the Philippines na nag-aggregate to 1.5 billion. Pero sobrang labo pa rin talaga para sa ating mga jeepney drivers. And that lead to loss of livelihood program of small-time jeepney owners and operators. Tapos yung fare po is much higher. And a culture threat siya in a sense that Philippines kasi is known to have jeepneys as mode of transportation. And parang nawawala yung tatak Filipino pag nawala din yung mga jeepneys natin. Next po.
So for the interventions and solutions ng power plants, isa dito ang Republic Act number 6969 or also known as Toxic Substances and Hazardous and Nuclear Wastes Control Act of 1990. Here ito ang mga objectives to monitor and regulate chemical substances and mixtures that present unreasonable risk or injury to health or to the environment, to inform and educate the people regarding the hazards and risks of toxic chemicals and other substances. And lastly, to prevent the entry as well as keeping or storage and disposal of hazardous and nuclear wastes into the country. So ito naman ang prohibited acts ng Republic Act number 6969. The following acts shall be considered unlawful. Knowingly use a chemical substance or mixture which is imported, manufactured, processed, and distributed in violation of this act. So yun yung mga intentionally na alam mong ginamit mo yung chemical substance. Failure or refusal to submit reports, notices, or other information, access to records as required by this act. Failure or refusal to comply with the pre-manufacture and pre-importation requirements. Cause, aid, or facilitate directly or indirectly in the storage, importation, or bringing to Philippine territory, including its maritime economic zones, even in transit, either by means of land, air, or sea transportation. So, pag-participate sa pag-store or pagdala sa loob ng bansa ng chemical substances. So another one is the Republic Act number 7156 or the Mini Hydroelectric Power Incentive Act of 1991. So ginawa itong act na to is ginawa lang para maimpluwensya ng mga tao na mag-result into mini hydroelectric power sites. So for the next few slides, naglagay din kami ng international current interventions and solutions. First is the WMO or the World Meteorological Organization. Sila ang nagmo-monitor ng condition and activity in the Earth's atmosphere. Sila rin ang nagpa-facilitate ng data management centers and telecommunication systems in the rapid exchange of weather and climate. Dahil sila nagmo-monitor, sila ang may kakayahang magbahagi sa atin kung ano ang mga ganap sa atmosphere. Example na lamang ay kung gaano nakainit ang temperature sa loob ng atmosphere. Next up is the IPCC or Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. What is IPCC? Ang IPCC or Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change ay isang samahan na ginawa ng WMO and UNEP. Ang UNEP ay ang United Nations Environment Program. Ito ay isang organization ng governments ng mga miyembro ng UN or WMO. Sila ang nag-a-assess ng general information tungkol sa climate change. Sakop nito ang mga pagtukoy sa kung ano na ang nangyayari sa kasalukuyang panahon, kung ano ang mga naging epekto nito sa ating mundo, at pati na rin ang mga posibleng epekto nito sa ating lahat sa hinaharap. Sila din ang tumutukoy kung saang topics pa kailangan ng further research regarding climate change. Another one is the Paris Agreement or the United Nations Paris Climate Agreement. So, in summary lang, mayroong 196 parties na nagkaroon ng treaty sa Paris at sinabing mayroong silang lahat na goal which is mapababa yung global warming below 2 to 1.5 degrees Celsius noong 2016. Sa loob ng Paris Agreement, napag-usapan din nilang magbigay ng suporta financially and sa technical and capacity building sa mga nangangailangang bansang kasapi rito. Ang tanong, paano nila matatrack at malalaman kung gaano nakalaki ang na-achieve at nagawa ng isang bansa? Meron silang ginawang ETF or Enhanced Transparency Framework kung saan starting 2024 ay magre-report ang bawat bansa kung ano ang kanilang mga ginawa sa pag-take ng action sa climate change. Last but not the least, ang UN Climate Change Conference UK 2021 or also known as COP26. Ang COP26 ay continuation lamang ng Paris Agreement na tinatawag ding COP21. Sa Glasgow naman sila nagtipon-tipon noong November 13, 2021 upang malaman kung ano-ano na ang na-contribute ng bawat bansa sa sinabing agreement. Sinabi rin nila dito na hindi imposible makamit ang goal na mapababa ng 1.5 degrees Celsius globally. Ngunit magagawa lamang ito kung patuloy na makikisa ang bawat bansa. Napag-usapan dito ang isa sa mga naging issue ng previous COPs, which is science and urgency. Dati raw ay hindi nabibigyang halaga ang agham, kaya simula noong COP26, gusto nilang mas mag-rely at paniwalaan ang agham.
Itong mundo lang ang ating tirahan. Kaya sarap makitang malusog ang kalikasan. Bugahaw na kalangit at lunti ang kapaligiran. Tiyak na mimiti makasama sa kinabukasan. Marami na silang kumikilos para buhayin ang karagatan. Nariyan din silang pumuprotekta sa kabundukan. Mga mamamayang pinapanatili ang kalinisan. At mga proyektong layuning ibalik ang kanyang kagandahan. Atin sanang pangalagaan itong biyaya. Huwag na tayo maging sakim at pabaya. Diba't mas masarap tumanghap ng sariwang hangin. Mula sa mga punong mabuhay lang tayo ang hangarin. Hindi lang sa panaginip mararanasan ng paraiso. Kung ang bawat puso ay may pag-ibig para sa mundo. Balutin natin ang pagmamahal ang bawat sentimetro. Paniguradong palalasap natin ang kanyang regalo. Kaibigan, tayo ang mamamayan ng mundo at responsibilidad nating pangalagaan ito. Halina't liparin ang ipapawid. Sisiri ng karagatan sa bawat saglit. Sulyapin ang makukulay na baghari at bituing nagdiningning sa gabi. Damhin ang nagawin ng mga hayop mula sa bulubundukin at sa kanyang sako. At ating dinggin ang kanyang pagsamo sa ating mga taong hinayaang mabuhay dito. Tayo na, tayo na, hindi ka nag-iisa. Kasama mo. Ako.
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 At ako sa paghakbang.
That concludes our presentation po. Thank you po. And sorry po nagkakataon kami ng ibang slides dahil kulang na po sa time. And thank you po.
Thank you. Grabe, congratulations. Excuse na nga. Congratulations sa presentation. Napakaganda. Nanghinayang nga din ako na kailangan natin mag-cut kasi we are running out of time. But still, yung content, yung substance naman ay talaga namang napakaganda. Lalo na yung mga videos nyo. Nakakakilabot nga siya. And I'm very proud to have students like you na talagang would go beyond what is asked to them, di ba? Maganda yung video, parang gusto ko nga siyang ipakita sa social media pag malaki eh. Actually, lahat ng mga gawa ninyo. Nakakatuwa. So, sorry. Teka nga. Sorry, ang dami nating may ubo ngayon. Anyway, let's gather questions from the audience. At tsaka syempre, I'd like to commend din yung naghakot kayo ng mga estudyante ha. Hindi ko kilala yung iba. Kasi naman hindi ko naman kayo nakikita. But alam kong kayo din yun mga kaklase nyo. So, ayun, congratulations. I'd also like to commend the part wherein you differentiated yung climate change at global warming, no? Kasi it's one of the most misconceptions na same sila or ano. So, na-appreciate ko yung pag nyo dun, pag differentiate. Anyway, your questions sa audience ay pwede po natin i-address sa ating presenters. Pumunta lamang po sa menti.com, www.menti.com, and use the code 63680339. So, lahat po kayo ay invited na magtanong kahit itanong niyo pa kung sino yung mga nandun, bahala kayo. So, Ang tanong ko muna habang tayo'y naghihintay ng question ay, ah, sandali. Actually, parang wala nga akong maisip kasi nabigay naman lahat. Ah, Sige, hindi ko pa ma-construct, eh. Pero gusto kong i-highlight din yung pag-present niyo ng top emitting countries sa CO2 kasi i-highlight ko din na kasi 'di ba nung recently lang na typhoon, ang daming dumating na mga donations 'no. Ah, Na-realize ko or ay gusto ko rin ma-realize niyo na sa totoo lang obligasyon kasi nila yun kasi sila yung mga top, greenhouse emission countries. Tapos tayo yung pinaka-vulnerable na country pagdating sa effects. So, na-gets niyo yun? Tayo yung nakaka-receive nung much nung impact, nung greater impact from what they are doing. So, yung mga ganyan na donation, for me dapat lang kasi, yan yung obligation nila, responsibility nila sa mga sectors na naka-receive ng mataas na impact and totoo yan na yung the greater the ano, the higher the temperature, the stronger the typhoons that we will receive. And ito nga yung Odette, kagaya nga niyan may mga naapektuhan sa inyo, hindi lang sa inyo, sa mga kaklase niyo, sa ibang mga kaklase niyo na nahihirapan sa setup ngayon. And wala naman may gusto ng gano'n, hindi ba? So, ang daming effect nung mga gano'ng actions na yun. So, ah, kaya nga ano, gusto kong i-highlight sa inyo na yung mga actions natin whether good or bad, ay may impact sa mga kapwa natin. And kagaya nga nung mga, kaninang mini sermon na binigay ko sa inyo, isa lang yun sa mga actions na makaka-affect sa kasamahan natin sa paligid. And ayun nga, eto nga yung ganitong climate change ay lahat tayo may ambag dito, lahat din tayo merong ano dito, may naambag tayo hindi man direct, puwedeng indirectly, pero lahat 'yan may impact bumabalik din sa atin, hindi ba? O ayun. Walang gustong magtanong, huwag kayong matakot, huwag kayong mahiya, ganti-ganti lang, joke. Sige ang tanong ko, kasi na-mention niyo yung ano, eh, yung jeepney modernization program na isa sa mga ways na para daw mabawasan yung greenhouse gas emissions sa bansa through the use of electric jeepneys. However, have you considered the contribution of the electricity generation to the greenhouse gases as well? Kasi para ka makapag-generate ng electricity, you need to burn fossil fuels as well. So, have you considered that? And if yes, how are we going to uh, balance somehow? So, talaga bang masasabi natin na ano siya, alternative? If that's the case, who would like to answer? Actually, hindi lang sa ano, eh, hindi lang sa jeepneys. Anything na electrical in nature, though it may not directly emit CO2 gases, but in the generation process of electricity, hindi ba din naman siya nagge-generate nun? Sinong gustong sumagot? Yes po, Besario.
Miss, itong jeepney modernization program po kasi, ginawa po siya para ma-lessen po yung sobrang nai-emit ng mga old jeepneys natin dito sa Pilipinas kasi po great contributor din po sila for greenhouse gas effect po. And then the problem is hindi po fully na-address yung pagsagot sa sa climate change. Like nga po, meron siyang yung engine po, yung Euro 4 engine po, which is gumagamit pa rin ng mga fuels po, which lead to more production of fossil fuels, continuous production pa rin ng fossil fuel. And then meron din po siyang electric driven po, 'di ba? Nasabi ko po kanina. And the problem is that po, ayun nga po, gumagamit pa rin, nagko-cause pa rin ng dahilan kung bakit patuloy na nagbaburn ng mga fossil fuels. And yung siguro yung pinaka-absolute or concrete answer to the problem of all vehicles po is to completely use solar panels po. Para po completely na nakadepende tayo sa energy na nakukuha natin sa sun po.
Okay. Sige. Tama naman. Masasabi ko rin na hindi rin siya talaga absolute na solution. Siguro additional lang. Pero I think okay na rin siguro kaysa sa wala. But gusto kong i-ano dito na hindi lahat ng solution natin is solution talaga. Hindi natin sure kasi it might create another problem, 'di ba? Before yung sa mga ganong assessment, ay kumbaga dapat ma-assess talaga natin siya maigi. Okay? So yun lang naman yung question ko. Else wala pa ding tanong. Wala pa din silang tanong. Ayaw nyo ba? Yes po, Chen.
Ma'am, dagdag ko lang po. Sa electric driven vehicles po, ma'am. Yung ano po kasi, kamakailan lang po may kaibigan po ako dati na ano. Ay, kaibigan ko po siya dati na ngayon po is nagbebenta po sila ng electric driven vehicles po. Tulad po ng e-motorcycles po. Yung kasi yung itsura din po sila ng gas fed motorcycles po. Yung ginagamitan po ng mga gas ganun po, diesel. And ano po? Sorry. So ano po, ang sabi niya po isang full charge po ng e-motorcycles po is kaya na po tumakbo ng 70 kilometers po. Tapos yung speed po niya is 65 kilometers per hour. Tapos yung ang mas kinalamang po nila sa sa mga gas fed na motorcycles or vehicles po is 10 pesos lang po yung nagagamit na kuryente lang po. Yung naibabayad po sa bayarin sa kuryente pag nag-charge. Pero pag paulit-ulit po ginamit, syempre patataas.
Okay. So more on the efficiency naman yung kanyang advantage and yung usage of electricity. Okay, sige, this is noted. Thank you for your answers. Okay. Okay, may nag-comment. Sige lang. Sure. Ba't ganun? Ba't wala nagtatanong? Ayan na, meron na. Fossil fuels is part of our daily lives, but we are also aware na masama ito sa environment. Does it mean na tinotolerate natin somehow pagkasira ng environment sa patuloy na paggamit ng fossil fuels? Good question, actually. Chen, would you like to answer again dito?
Apo, ma'am.
Sige,
Ma'am,
go.
sa tingin ko po, hindi naman po sa tinotolerate. Pero karamihan po kasi sa atin, yung mga mahihirap po, paano po sila makapagluto ng pagkain nila? So, ginagamit po nila yung coals, yung isa po sa uri ng fossil fuels po. Ayun lang po yung afford ng budget nila. So, ayun din po yung gagamitin nila. So, hindi din po natin mapipigil yun kasi doon lang po sila kumikita, doon po sila namumuhay. Yun po.
Okay. Thank you. Aguilar.
Sagot lang naman.
Pardon?
Pero wala.
Pardon? Medyo nagcha-choppy po ang audio mo.
Hello po.
Ayun. Ewan ko, sa end ko kasi walang na-capture sorry. Pwede bang paulit?
Apo.
Thank
Sige
you.
po, ma'am. Ang sagot ko lang po is parang hindi naman po tinotolerate kasi may choice naman po tayong gumamit ng mga biofuel. Pero mahal po talaga yung production niya and hindi po siya masyadong affordable pa sa panahon ngayon. And wala pa pong parang ginagawa pa lang siyang parang maliit na porsyento pa lang po yung nagagamit ng mga biofuel. Pero sinasabay na rin po siya para kahit pa paano po mabawasan at hindi po tayo fully dependent sa mga fossil fuel.
Okay. Thank you sa answer mo. Actually, yun nga malaki yung factor yung yung social status din. Kagaya niyan, yung may mga bago tayong technology. Pero kung titingnan ninyo, may presyo. And may inequality when it comes to accessibility. Na yung mga mayayaman or may kaya lang yung ano, and tama, hindi naman din natin sila masisisi kasi hindi naman din nila afford. Kahit naman din gustuhin nila, 'di ba, na magkaroon ng solar panel, magkaroon ng ano, 'di ba? Kahit sa totoo lang, ako interesado din ako sa mga ganyang solar panel. Pero when it comes to expenses, kaya siguro 'no, maganda na magkaroon ng programs yung government subsidize or mag-educate. Kasi, sa totoo lang kasi naman yung presyo, hindi rin naman din kasi supported yung research or yung production nun. So, talagang hahanap din naman ng income yung mga gumagawa. Hindi rin naman puwedeng ilibre lahat ng bagay sa mundo, hindi ba? So, hindi naman natin sila masisisi. Marami talagang factors 'yan. And ano, I appreciate na may mga ganitong ano tayo, views. Kumbaga somehow nagba-balance, 'di ba? Thank you sa question. Let's mark this as answered. Ito, as a civil engineering student, how can you help reduce climate change with the structures you will build? Uy, nice question. Gustong magtanong? Sorry, sumagot? Besario.
Miss, to answer this question, ngayon po kasi is yung pagiging civil engineer is also acquiring or gaining knowledge on how to innovate or make establishment that can lessen our contribution to climate change or sa iba't iba pang aspeto ng lipunan na nagaganap na maaring mag-contribute tayo. So as a civil engineering student, if we are capable of establishing buildings na, kailangan meron na rin tayong sapat na kaalaman upang matugunan para masustain pa rin yung yung mga needs natin. Like for example, tatayo tayo ng buildings. Dapat ba nating completely technological or technology driven ang buong structures na yun? We need also to consider kung ano yung mga epekto ng ilalagay nating features dun sa specific structure na yun. So, ayun po, Miss.
Okay, thank you sa answer. Sino pa? May gusto pa? Sige, Bakiran.
Ma'am, ang cutting of trees naman isn't always a bad thing po. Ang bad thing po natin is yung deforestation po, ang pagkaubos kagad po, at saka lalo na po yung mga illegal logging po. So yung pagpuputol lang po, hindi naman po siya ganun kasama po. As long na, kasi may mga iba po dyan na nagpuputol po siya ng puno pero nagpa-plant pa rin po sila ng trees. Yun lang po.
Tama naman. It's all about sustainability. Kahit naman sa mining, 'di ba? Kailangan kasi natin ng resources. Kaya kailangan din talaga natin magputol ng puno. Or yun nga, sa mining, kailangan natin ng gold and for marketing purposes. Ang problema kasi, yung mga irresponsable na hindi sumusunod sa batas at nilalaktawan yung responsibilidad na pinirmahan nila. May pinipirmahan silang agreement na kailangan nilang ayusin yung lugar, palitan yung pinutol nila. Nagiging pasaway kasi sila. So, doon pumapasok yon yung pandaraya. Yung pandaraya, yung pag-skip nila sa mga responsibilidad nila. Yes po, Kuroko Chia. Like to add something.
Ma'am, tulad nga po kanina, yung sa power plants po, kung gagawa man po ng power plants ngayon, dapat po ay yung renewable power plants na po at hindi yung lumang types ng power plants tulad ng coal-fired and nuclear power plants. Maaaring malaki po yung mas nabibigay nilang electricity pero hindi po talaga siya safe sa mundo natin ngayon. Kaya dapat mag-result na lang po tayo sa renewable power plants tulad ng hydroelectric, wind turbines, and solar panels po.
Okay. Tama. Ablola.
Hello po, ma'am. Rinig po. So,
Yes.
yung isasagot ko na lang dito sa tanong na as a civil engineering student. Kasi medyo konti pa lang talaga yung na-discuss sa amin about sa civil engineering. Magbe-base na lang po kami dun sa subject. Yung about sa ethics, ma'am. Kasi kung titingnan po natin, civil engineers have the influence on how our world works. So, ang civil engineers, kaya niya mag-decide kung isang bagay ay pwedeng itayo, ang isang building ay pwedeng or bawal. So, bilang civil engineers, kung ikaw na alam mo na masama yung epekto nun sa environment, pwede siyang hindi man about sa climate change, about na rin sa community, pwede siyang maka-damage, is wag mo nang ituloy na ipatayo. Kasi sabi po sa amin, pwede ka mag-cancel ng mga projects kung alam naman namin sa sarili namin na kung i-study namin yung projects is not approvable. So, pwede mo nang i-cancel po yun, ma'am. So, yun yung isa kong tingin sa as a civil engineers. And next po is sa amin sa mga civil engineers, pwede kaming mag-create ng way kung paano yung mga water resources is magiging mas malinis. Kasi nga, syempre yung sa bodies of water kanina nasa climate change is yan yung pinaka-una din na natatamaan po. So, yun po yung sa akin, ma'am.
Okay. And tama din naman. Kayo, pagka naging mga engineers na kayo, ang laki ng responsibilidad na nakasalalay sa inyo. Hindi lang sa 'di ba? Kasi tayo may tinatawag tayong social responsibility. Sa aya't sa gusto niyo meron tayo nun. And kagaya nga ng sinabi mo, pwede kayong tumanggi kaya nga andito din yung subject na 'to para somehow magising or maging aware sa mga ganitong issues na kung saan pwede tayong mas maging kumbaga pwede tayong mag-contribute sa change or tayo mismo yung ng change na yun, 'di ba? At yung importante dito again, yung ano ba tawag dito, yung integrity natin, yung paninindigan natin sa tama, hindi ba? Kung alam natin na mali, alam natin na may damage sa environment, papanindigan dapat natin yun at huwag tayo magpapadala sa mga external factors na, alam niyo yun, kung tama, dun tayo sa tama. Okay? Sige sandali. Actually eto na nga, dumami na nga yung tanong. Kaso wala na tayong time. Kailangan na natin mag-proceed sa next presentation. So ise-send ko na lang din ito. Actually hindi ko pa nga na-send sa iba pang nauna sa inyo yung mga previous questions. Pasensya na hindi rin kinaya ng yung weekend. Kahit naman nung nagbakasyon ako, nagkasakit din ako. Kaya wala rin ako nagawa. So, ise-send ko na lang lahat siguro mamaya. Sana magkaroon ng oras, 'no? But I've heard a lot naman na from you, na-assess naman na natin maigi yung itong pinag-effortan ninyong presentation and again congratulations for a job well done. So send ko na lang 'tong questions mamaya. At may nagtanong nga dito, pahingi daw ng lyrics. Anyway, commendable yung ginawa niyong kanta, ha. O bigyan niyo daw siya ng lyrics. Ayun lang. At yes po, may nagtaas ng kamay? Ba? Or wala? Sige, puwede na mag-start po yung next presenter. Pasensya na din sa time constraint natin. Okay? Sige, puwede na mag-umpisa.
Of our country is still vague due to different unsolved problems we are experiencing since before. And in order for us to make our future vivid, we individuals together with the government should make a choice and act to be free in this suffocating cage and to have a rapturous life. To all our blackmates and our professor, Miss Camille, good day. My name is Kaji Delas and of course accompanied by my group mates to discuss one of the socio-scientific issues here in our country. We, the 7th group, create a video presentation for us to explain and discuss the issue assigned to us presently. Now, sit back and relax as we are preparing our video. Thank you so much, and this might not be as creative as what other groups did, but I hope you can learn from it, and I hope this can be an instrument to poke your conscience.
Nagbabala po ang isang grupo na posibleng magkaroon ng power crisis sa susunod na taon.
Power shortage looming in the distance in 2021, a water shortage that is already here and will continue for the next 3 years.
Adds the country's current energy reserves fall way below the grid code's required 23% of the country's total installed capacity. That's on top of the potential electricity required to supply the government's massive infrastructure.
Namumurong magdeklara ng krisis sa kuryente lalo pat mismong ang Department of Energy ang kabado sa manipis na supply po ng ating kuryente.
Our country, which is the Philippines, has been facing many pressing problems that provide an enormous impact in our daily lives. There is poverty that we still can terminate and address. Climate change that greatly affects many sectors in our economy, especially the agriculture, which is rapidly becoming worse as the time goes by. Corruption that is still a significant obstacle to a good governance in the Philippines. A child labor which stops the opportunity for the children and threatens their education and development. And unemployment that is increasing massively. These are just a few in which we Filipinos and our country as a whole experiencing since before. There are lots of topics and issues that should be addressed and of course be discussed in our country. But now, this episode will focus on one of the hurdles under social scientific issue, and that is energy crisis. Energy crisis is a significant bottleneck in the supply of energy resources to an economy. And it has been an unsolved issue since before, especially in our country. This is a long-term problem that already has a few solutions, yet we cannot fully utilize this solution and fully address it. This crisis covers a lot of issues and it is a very broad and complex topic. And it could be in the industry, consumption, shortage, production, market, speculation, reserve, and security. But aside from all of that issues, the problem that keeps threatening not just us, the humanity, but also the world as a whole, is the diminishing supply of fossil fuels. Hello everyone, my name is Carji Deles and welcome to another episode of Showtime. So this episode will be special because the issue that we will be talking about is all about energy crisis, which is one of the global problems that we are facing nowadays. And today's episode will be more and extra special because we have prominent guests that will join us and help me to discuss and elucidate the issue. So, are you guys ready to know who those are? Are you? Let me hear. So, let's stop beating around the bush and let me introduce them. So, our guests for today are... So, hello po, grabe. It's a great pleasure for me to be in the same screen with them and of course to discuss this topic. So now I will take the spotlight just for now to give you an introduction to this issue. And this special episode is entitled as Energy Crisis, the Future of Fossil Fuel. Yeah, I know that this topic is very common and almost all of you is very familiar with it, but let me ask you a question. Is being familiar or is being aware enough to solve this kind of problem? Or have you ever asked yourself if you, as a Filipino, have you done something to help solving this issue even a little? Because based on what I have observed and even me myself, yes, we know what the topic is all about. We even have an idea about what we can do for us to help, but most of us don't feel connected to its reality. Because there is no real energy crisis if you're not concerned about life after your time on Earth is gone, but there is a genuine energy crisis if you care about the future that the next generation will inherit. So at the end of this episode, I wanted you guys to ask yourself, am I a preventer or a contributor? If you are a preventer, I'm glad to know that and you're doing good. Keep it up. And if you are a contributor, I hope this special episode can help you realize how serious and crucial this problem is. So now, let me discuss the introduction and the background of this topic for you guys to have a better grasp about it. So, a little bit history of fossil fuels. So, ever since before, fossil fuels have been utilized by people. It is first used by the caveman or the primitive humans in Paleolithic period mainly for heating. So, cavemen were able to discover fossil fuel because of their desperate need to survive, like in a cold weather, especially before because their way of living is nomadic, or simply they don't have a permanent and warm home unlike today. And after that, archaeologists have also found evidence that the Romans in England used it in the 2nd and 3rd centuries, in which, just like cavemen, they mainly used fossil fuels for heating. Especially that time, they used it for public baths. And during the 1300s in North America, the Hopi Indians used fossil fuels not just for heating, but as well as in baking the pottery they made from clay. And after that, the potential of fossil fuels are prudently utilized starting from the commencement of Industrial Revolution. And as we can observe, we still use it today. And actually, before the invention of James Watt, there are inventors who invented steam engines like Thomas Savery and Thomas Newcomen, but it was improved by him due to its limitation. So basically, the Industrial Revolution played a major role in expanding the use of fossil fuels, especially coal. Because with the invention of steam engines, it becomes possible for machines to do work that is previously done by humans and animals. And this led to different inventions and technologies that were powered by fossil fuels that really helped us and helped the growth of the economy in the England. And it gradually spread over much of the rest of the world and is still evident up to this now. So, since before until now, fossil fuels are the main sources of energy. So, these fossil fuels are made from decomposing plants and animals, and these fossil fuels are found in the Earth's crust that contain carbon and hydrogen, which burn to produce energy. So, coal, oil, and natural gas are example of fossil fuels. And it took more than 100 million of years to form and for us to use it. And remember that it is not renewable resources. That's why anytime or in the future, it is not impossible that our main sources of energy will reach depletion and run out. Especially today, because the supply of fossil fuels is beginning to diminish and become insufficient. And since fossil fuels are the main sources of energy, basically it is necessary and play a vital role in our daily lives because our access to energy ensure the quality of life and the economic development of the country. since different technologies and inventions are mainly operated by energy extracted from fossil fuels. It is really essential in the Philippines because fossil fuels were utilized in various ways. There is a lot of things that we can do with the presence of energy, and especially nowadays with the advent of technology, people were able to have more convenient lives because of it. And one of the main usage of fossil fuels that has been utilized since the penetration of industrialization is transportation. So thanks to fossil fuels, because we were able to travel easier than before, especially nowadays, because if you have a tons of money and you wanted to have a vacation out of town, you just have to book your ticket online and wait for your schedule, and that's it. And even as in the middle class, we were able to go in the place we wanted to go with the aid of the vehicle powered by fossil fuels. And it could be jeepneys, buses, tricycles, motorcycles, and even airplanes. And of course, not just us individuals that gain benefits from the transportation, because looking in the bigger picture, the economy as a whole benefits from it. Why? It is because it doesn't just allow the faster movement and mobility of the people, but also the goods and services of the economy. So basically, transportation creates economic growth because this increases economic productivity like importing and exporting goods and product, as well as the communication with other countries which establish the civilization. So aside from transportation, one of the things discovered and utilized up until now because of the potential of fossil fuels is electricity. Electricity is a very important commodity nowadays. In the Philippines, there are several electricity sectors which provide electricity through power generation, transmission, and distribution. So in short, almost everything that helps driving the growth of the economy and of course makes our lives convenient is powered by electricity. And that's how necessary it is and how we depend on it. So that's why I wonder if you can still imagine what the world will be like without the aid of electricity. Okay, I'm back. So without the aid of electricity, maybe that will be as dark as what happened a while ago, or maybe worse. So to conclude all my statements, fossil fuel plays a major role to the development of the world on account of the fact that we can harness energy from it. And in fact, fossil fuels is our main sources of energy not just in the Philippines but almost all countries in the world. And one of the energy we can have from it is electricity, which we can't deny its significance in our everyday lives. Because almost all of the technologies we utilize nowadays is powered by electricity, in which those technologies help us in improving our communication, transportation, learning process, as well as healthcare, and many other infrastructure business areas. So basically, it contributes significantly to the access and acquisition of information and therefore the development as a whole, because it also led to other invention which help us humans. Yes, it is very evident how fossil fuel help us in various ways, but if you look in the other point of view, if you look to the other picture of the world, crisis is rapidly growing and our situation right now is not as astonishing as we think it is. We have always known that the energy we use every day is not unlimited, yet we take it for granted. Oil, gas, power, and even water has limited availability. Yet we Filipinos have not taken enough precautions to deal with the possible energy crisis. And when I say we, I am not just referring to the governments, but to all of us, the common Filipino citizens who use energy. That's why it is becoming a serious threat. It is a serious threat because the energy crisis we have in the present days doesn't just limit to the diminishing supply of fossil fuels. Just for additional information, I don't know if you're familiar in the issue to the possible depletion of Malampaya gas field. So, for those who don't know what Malampaya gas field is, Malampaya gas field is a deep water gas condensate reservoir and it is utilized or used to extract natural gas, which is one of the country's sources of energy. and it condensates from the depths of Palawan Basin. And according to DOE, or Department of Energy, the production from the Malampayan natural gas has dropped 13% from January to September this year. And this decline was caused by the depletion to the Malampayan reserves and decreasing reservoir pressure. And of course, the decrease in reservoir pressure will decrease the quantity of gas being produced. And they expected that the Malampayas natural gas production will continue to decrease until the end of Malampaya field life in 2027. So imagine the situation we have today. We still can provide a concrete plan and solution to other problem, yet the new one arose. So the threat in our country is growing, and it is really possible that we might face a great catastrophe in the future. And focusing to the diminishing supply of fossil fuels, there are several factors that causes the threat to fossil fuels in the Philippines. And the first one is our heavily reliance and dependence in fossil fuels. It is just sad to say this, but let's admit the fact that while alternative energy resources are falling around the globe and starting to be implemented in other countries, the Philippines up to now has shown few signs of moving away from fossil fuels. And based on the Department of Energy, the power generation mix in the Philippines as of 2020 was composed primarily of coal energy, which is accounted for 57.2% of the total energy generated in the country, while renewable, on the other hand, held 21.2% of the energy mix, and natural gas at 19.2%, and oil with 2.4%. So obviously, the stat shows how dependent we are from fossil fuels, especially from coals. And you know why, despite of knowing about its depletion and knowing that it is a single biggest source of greenhouse gas emission, coal is still continue to be supported by both the government and businesses in the Philippines. Do you have any idea why? It is simply because this is the cheapest fuel option. Yes, we know and we are all aware that this is one of the causes to the threat in the supply of fossil fuels, but it is just sad to admit that we can't escape from the fact that it is the cheapest fuel option in our country. That's why we depend on it a lot. And our dependence in fossil fuel causes to its diminishment. So moving on, of course, aside from our heavily reliance on fossil fuels, one of the factors that is a threat to the energy supply in our country is overpopulation. Basically, it is because as the population grows, so too does the amount of resources needed to keep so many people. And that resources don't just limit to food and water, because it is also applied in fossil fuels, which place a greater demand. So for us to understand it better, let's minimize the scope. Let's say in the electricity. We know that electricity is a very important commodity, right? And with the continuous growth of the population in the Philippines, our country, the demand of electricity will increase as well. And in order to meet the demand of electricity in our country, we need to have more supply of fossil fuels. And that will thereafter cause to its diminishment. And according to PSA, or the Philippine Statistic Authority, the population of the Philippines is 111,776,317 as of December 2021. And approximately 93% of the Filipino households have an access on electricity. It is good to know that the access to electricity have improved a lot in the Philippines compared before, because way back then, there are a lot of people in remote areas that don't have an access to electricity. That's why I'm glad to see its improvement and refinement. But despite its refinement, we can never overlook what the problem arises because of the rapidly growth of the population in our country. Because overpopulation means overconsumption, in which the higher the number of people in the country, the higher the demand will be, which will put strain on fossil fuel. So moreover, another factor that causes the threat on the supply of fossil fuels is unexplored renewable energy options in our country. Because while the rest of the world is moving away from fossil fuels and shifting to a clean renewable energy, the Philippines is moving in the opposite direction. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but our country, the Philippines, ratified and approved the Paris Agreement. So for those of you guys who don't know what it is, Paris Agreement is the one that provides a framework for financial, technical, and capacity building support to those countries who need it, like our country, which is mainly aimed to reach global peaking of greenhouse gas emissions as soon as possible, or simply to limit the global warming. And it could also help to prevent the diminishing supply of fossil fuels. But up to now, our country shown few signs of moving away from coal despite ratifying the Paris Agreement. So what I'm trying to point out is government subsidies and good policy making play a major part in how renewable energy sources will begin to grow. But our country find it hard to execute given the fact that most of the biggest energy companies in the Philippines is overly dependent on coal. And they wish for coal expansion that hinder the country's transition to a low carbon future. Evidently, our country is still favors in fossil fuels and will continue to be more so in the future if the proposed coal projects push through. Unless we give renewable energy a serious thought, the problem of energy crisis, especially the diminishment supply of fossil fuels, cannot be solved. And lastly, the factor that causes the threat to fossil fuels is our wastage of energy. In most part of the world, we people do not realize the importance of conserving energy. Just like what I said a while ago, yes, we know what the topic is all about and we even have an idea about what we can do for us to help, but most of us don't feel connected to its reality because we Filipinos are just stuck to the idea of being aware to our situation right now, but we don't give it a serious thought and put action on it. Bad policy making, economic and political instability, and mismanagement of energy resources are just a few that led to energy crisis. But will we keep blaming our government regarding to this issue? Because you and I myself know that we don't have much contribution to address the problem. Maybe we are really a contributor because from simply leaving the lights or fan on even though we're not using it, it is enough evidence that we are wasting energy. Or charging our phone overnight or even using our cars or motorcycle instead of walking on short distance is wasting energy. Yes, the government is at fault and has a lot of shortcomings, but we ourselves are also at fault. The Philippines is gradually marching towards a severe energy crisis, and we have always known that the energy we use every day will reach its limit in the future. Yet we take it for granted and abuse it. And because of the shortcomings of the government and we individuals, the situation is becoming worse and provides a great impact in our lives. And now, I gladly welcome and give the floor to none other than our Miss Universe 2015, Pia Joy Words back together with Mr. Poggy 2028 Batika to discuss the societal impact of this issue.
Mabuhay! I am Pia Joy Wurzbach, Miss Universe 2015, and I'm here to discuss about the suicidal impact of the issue. Ano-ano nga bang naging epekto na to sa ating lipunan kabilang ang socio-economic, socio-cultural, and socio-ethical na aspeto ng buhay ng mga Pilipino? Sino-sino nga bang mas naapektuhan sa isyong ito sa ating bansa? So here are the parts of the suicidal impact. First, we have in socio-economic. I will discuss about on how the increase of oil prices affect the public transportation, jobs or businesses, and recession. And for the second part, how the lack of accessibility and electricity affects the education and the healthcare. Ito ng pagtaas ng presyo ng langis. Kahit batang nasa elementarya ay alam na kung tataas ang presyo ng langis ay magsisitaasan din ang mga presyo ng iba't ibang bilihin dahil ay sa mga negosyante, direkta at indirekta ginagamitan nito ng langis. Consumer feel the pinch of rising oil prices. Ayon sa balitang aking napanood, sumabay pa sa pagpasok ng Burmans ang sunod-sunod na pagtaas ng presyo ng langis. As a consumer, you may already understand the microeconomic implications of higher oil prices. When observing higher oil prices, most of us are likely to think about the price of gasoline as well, since gasoline purchases are necessary for most households. When gasoline prices increase, a larger share of households' budget is likely to be spent on it, which leaves less to spend on other goods and services. Higher gas prices can result in noticeable increases in some public transportation ridership. Napapadalas na daw ang pagtaas ng presyo ng mga produktong petrolyo, kaya laging lugi ang mga motorista, lalo na ang mga gumagamit ng diesel, gasoline at kerosene sa kanilang mga sasakyan, particularly ang mga nasahari ng mga pampublikong transportasyon. Maituturing na ang isang malaking pakikibaka sa maraming mamamayan ang araw-araw na paggamit ng public transportasyon ngayong krisis. Ngayong taon tumaas sa world market ang presyo ng crudo ng mahigit 50%. Ito ay dahil sa muling pagbubukas ng maraming ekonomiya ng mundo. Sumusunod ang Pilipinas sa kumpas ng world oil market, kaya naman nakararanas ng 8 magkakasunod na linggo na ring tumataas ang presyo ng gasolina, diesel at kerosene. According to the Department of Energy, sa loob ng 8 linggo, halos 20 pesos kada litro ang itinataas ng unleaded gasoline, 18 pesos naman ang itinataas ng diesel at 15.50 ang itinataas ng kerosene. Sinabi sa English ni Adolfo Jose Montesa, economic researcher at analyst sa Action Economic Reforms, na ang presyo ng mga bilihin ay nakadepende sa halaga ng mga input na ginagamit sa paggawa ng mga ito. Kaya halos lahat ng mga consumer goods ay maapektuhan ng mga presyo ng langis dahil ang mga kalakal ay kadalasang dinadala mula sa isang lugar patungo sa isa pa. Halimbawa mula sa pabrika patungo sa bodega hanggang sa mga supermarket at retail na tindahan. No to oil price hike, presyo ng langis ibaba. Ilan lamang yan sa mga isinisigaw ng mga Pilipino na lubos na naapektuhan dito. The same goes for businesses whose goods must be shipped from place to place or that use fuel as a major input, such as airline industry. Higher oil prices tend to make production more expensive for businesses, just as they make it more expensive for households to do the things they normally do. Increases in oil prices can increase costs for specific industries and economic functions. These costs are potentially passed on to other businesses and consumers depending on industry. Example can include an increase in price of shipping for new furniture from overseas, more expensive airline tickets, or the cost of Apple ship from a different state. An increase in oil prices can mean a rise in prices for seemingly unrelated goods or services. It is a fact of businesses that increases in the price of raw materials increase the overall cost of doing business. This is simple common sense as the businesses use the inputs to process into finished products and hence any rise in the input cost leads to overall increase in the price of the products. However, the case of a rise in oil prices is completely different as not only do the input costs rise, it also leads to an across-the-board rise in costs. This is because oil is an integral component of the modern global economy as virtually every aspect of economic activity depends on oil for its sustenance. Consider for instance the business of making steel. An increase in oil prices leads to an increase in the processual cost as the blast furnaces depends on oil for their operations. Next, as the transportation of iron ore needs oil, this cost also increases. Further, the finished steel bars and ingots have to be transported, which again raises the cost incurred. Therefore, an increase in oil prices leads to an across-the-board cost of doing business. Dahil na sa mga epektong iyan, it can also cause an economic recession. It is a period of general economic decline and is typically accompanied by a drop in the stock market, an increase in unemployment, and a decline in the housing market. With the increase in oil, economic growth will take a hit. If the oil prices would increase as its supply diminishes by year, economic growth of a country would be in a state of recession. If the oil prices bounce off from the increase and decrease, then economic growth would be in standstill. It's not an exaggeration to say the oil price really dictates the economic growth of a country, seeing how heavy reliant we were. Langis ang pinakaginagamitan ng source ng enerhiya ng mga transportasyon at services sectors at ang pangalawa ang agrikultura noong 2020. Ayon sa pinakahuling DOET Energy Statistic Report, isang malaking banta sa pagbangon ng ekonomiya natin ang napakataas na presyo ng petrolyo at gas. Ngunit wala tayo gaanong magagawa sa paggalaw ng presyo sa world market. Ayon sa World Bank, baka sa second half pa ng 2022 bumaba ang world energy prices. Access to electricity in the Philippines was reported at 95.63% in 2019, according to the World Bank Collection of Development Indicators, compiled from officially recognized sources. Electricity, as we all know, is one of the most important blessings that science has given to mankind. It also has become a part of modern life, and one cannot think of a world without it. Electricity has many uses in our day-to-day life. All this provide comfort to people. In factories, large machines was worked in the help of electricities. Essential items like food, cloth, paper, and many other things are the product of electricity. Essential items like food, cloth, paper, and many other things are the products of electricity. Furthermore, electricity is one of those discoveries that have changed the daily life of everybody on the planet. Electricity is the key component to modern technology. Pero how about those places na napagkaitan o walang access sa kuryente? Paano nga bang buhay nila kung wala silang kuryente? Living with no electricity might not be easy as you may think, and you not realize how many items in your home rely on it to function. Electrically managed technology supply us with many things, such as heat, food, water, transport, energy, entertainment, and communication. Rural areas without access to electricity can find it hard to attract good teachers as well as medical staff. It affects everything from lack of lights for school students to do their homework to equipment available in schools. Despite surviving thousands of years without it before, we have come to depend on it to complete our everyday tasks and have built our lives around it. We are so reliant on electrical power that it would be shock to many if you no longer had a regular supply. For education, schools without electricity do not have access to the internet and invaluable online resources. Teachers also lack the ability to create presentations, printouts, and use multimedia teaching methods. This limits the quality of education they can provide and deters well-trained teachers from working in schools that do not have electricity. Without electricity, that also means no fans or air conditioning and no classes or study time during evenings as there is no adequate source of light. It also affects the school attendance as many children are burdened with the responsibility of collecting firewood, of clean drinking water for their families. Solar lighting and solar powered power plants would provide communities with more study time in the evenings, as well as better health from cleaner water. Children would not be missing school from waterborne illnesses and disease. For healthcare, developing countries already suffer from a lack of food, clean water, and poverty. So with the addition of energy poverty, an already suffering population is even further denied the means to a good quality of life. Without reliable energy sources, healthcare facilities must treat people in the dark, even in emergencies, as well as lacking to the power to use sterilizing equipment and store vaccines correctly. Emergency procedures and childbirth in low lighting or the dark puts patients at serious risk and limits the number of nighttime services available. Unreliable energy means the safety of vaccines and medicine is undermined as the correct storage requirements cannot be guaranteed. Sustainable and reliable energy sources should be accessible worldwide, especially in the case of healthcare providers.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am HSL Sibatika, your Mr. Pogi 2020, and I am here to discuss about the social-cultural impact and ethical impacts of lack of fossil fuels. So first, let's go with the social-cultural impacts. And we have here is letter A, the exponential growth and exponential decay. Since our population around the world would not stop and eventually would only increase even more in the future, with finite resources or scarcity in the oil reserves around the world, our consumption rate of energy with the likes of fossil fuel, which provides 90% of our energy needs, will diminish as our population continuously grow. And one day, our energy appetite will exceed available resources, and exponential decay will replace exponential growth. So first, um, we need to understand what is the difference between exponential decay and exponential growth. And to to simplify, exponential growth is our ability to reproduce, or our ability to multiply, or our ability to rise or maximize our population within a given time. And exponential decay is our the decay of our species as a whole. And para mas maintindihan natin siya ng mas mabuti, let's compare the a yeast with its nutrients inside a petri dish And ikumpara natin sarili natin sa yeast inside of a petri dish. So, pag naglagay tayo ng isang yeast sa loob ng petri dish na puno ng nutrients, mabilis siya mag-multiply kasi yung sustenance for growth is nandun. And as long as nag-multiply siya sa loob ng isang petri dish and hindi niya pa alam na finite yung resources na kinukonsume niya, mag-multiply siya ng mag-multiply hanggang sa one day na sa dami ng yeast at hindi na kaya ng environment, which is yung petri dish, i-supply yung nutrients na kailangan para mag-grow yung isang species ng yeast, magdidecay yung yeast and mamamatay sila. So basically, ganun yung mangyayari sa atin. As long as na finite yung resources ng energy na kinoconsume natin, darating yung araw na yung energy na yun hindi na natin mapapakinabangan and mag-i-ikaos na tayo sa energy. So, yun yung pinaka-essence ng exponential and yun yung pinaka-idea behind the exponential growth and exponential decay. So, with that, mapupunta naman tayo dun sa next is yung eat or die. With the everly increasing population, consumption of food will increase also in some culture. Consumption of food will increase. Also, in some culture, they only eat meat and some are vegans. But regardless of what culture you are or what culture or tradition you reside with or you have or belong with the nature of modern food production that requires fertilizer or manure, it is impossible to have zero emission. Zero emissions means gumagamit tayo ng oil or fossil fuels para lang mag-produce ng crops natin or ng food natin. Moreover, the foods we like the most are undoubtedly emitting the most. For example, meat. Meat has become a staple food and even a symbol of status and wealth. So yun nga, the more na kailangan natin ng energy consumption kapag nagpo-produce tayo ng crops natin or yung makakainin natin. So, kapag nagkulang na tayo ng fossil fuels or hindi pala tayo nagkukulang na pala tayo as of speaking right now, darating yung point na yung pinoproduce nating crops is malilesen kapag hindi pa tayo nakapaghanap ng another alternate source of energy. And with that, syempre, maapektuhan yung lives ng mga tao. It will affect lives of the populace, and yung populace, they will seek to find a city in which that city will provide their growth or their sustenance for growth, which does not lack of necessities and energies. Next, we have the uneven resource distribution. Under it is human migration. Large groups of people often migrate to a place that has the resources they need or want, and migrate away from a place that lacks the resources they need. Further explaining, people want to seek a comfortable life, and by seeking comfortable life, they migrate to a city that has the sustenance for their growth. And by migrating, the city that has the sustenance for growth will put under the so-called overpopulation. And with overpopulation, the producers of oil or the energy will put under pressure because they supply oil based on the population within a city. So, bale, yun yung nangyayari. So, kapag pag nagkulang sa supply, syempre, tataas yung demand. Pag tumaas naman yung demand, tataas yung presyo. Kapag tumaas yung presyo, yung mga producers, gusto nila mag-supply without thinking or without forgetting the fact na nagkukulang na tayo sa fossil fuels. And hindi lang yung lack of fossil fuels yung problema dito, nandiyan na rin yung isa pang problema, which is yung climate change nga. So, next, as culture is tied up in the land we live, the finite reserves of oil cause a huge impact when it comes to its distribution. Producers are under pressure as tons of barrels of oils are being distributed to Europe and Asia due to their short supplies. Some of Some of the seas and lands within these countries are still unexplored due to the fact or due to the respect when it comes to wildlife, and some were extinguished of their resources, leaving crevices on mountains, leading to an impending threat when a typhoon occurs. So, yun nga, dahil nga napuput under pressure yung mga producers natin na galing sa Middle East and America, nagsusupply sila ng oil sa European Asia kasi nga sa lack of sufficiency when it comes to oil. And dahil dito, nagkakaroon ng incident. And kapag nag-cause ng incident, maapektuhan yung wildlife natin, yung fisheries, and yung lands. Kapag apektuhan yung fisheries and yung lands, um, magkakaroon ng impulsive mining na magkukos ng kapag nagkakaroon ng impulsive mining and kapag dumating yung natural phenomenon, magkukos na naman siya ng incident. So para siyang recurring events in which na dito natin nakikita yung domino effect na ikot-ikot lang, and tayo rin yung nahihirapan sa ganitong situation. Ethical impacts. Just as human beings have a right to the basic necessities of life, such as shelter, food, etc., all people also have a moral right of access to the energy they need for life. So, just as what the presentation said, ganun nga, kung yung tao nga daw is may rights sa lahat ng necessities natin, of course, meron din tayong rights sa energy na kinakailangan natin. So, paano kapag nawala yung energy na kinakailangan natin? Eh di, parang mas masahol pa tayo dun sa first ancestors natin na hindi pa marunong mag-create ng fire, right? And next, wisdom or greed. Soon we will question ourselves over the past deeds we made, if that were really the right choice, as the fossil fuel reserves diminish by each year, and taking into account that it is a non-renewable resource and the insurmountable problem that is called climate change. We are already in a situation that we need to resolve our issue with the declining fossil fuels. Although there are existing solutions to this problem, it still needs time to further its implication and impact it will bring, not to mention answering the question that does it really solve the issue with regards to energy crisis. This eventually leads to personal responsibility and willingness to impose limits to oneself.
Thank you for that information, Mr. 8 and Miss Pia Joy Wurtzbach. Now, our Miss Universe 2018 Cantillana Gray will take over together with Mr. Pasha to discuss the current interventions and solution to this issue.
Hi everyone, I'm Miss Universe 2018 Cantillana Gray, and I will be the one discussing the current interventions and solutions, specifically the laws and campaigns that we have in our country and are applicable to the issue. Currently, there are many global initiatives and projects that aim to resolve the world's issue regarding the energy crisis. This has taken the form of increased regulation and restriction on carbon emissions, promotion of greener manufacturing and construction projects, support to researches about hybrid technologies and more sustainable technologies through funding, and more. Locally, more communities recognize the importance of using the local resources instead of just prioritizing the recycle bins. Many sectors in the environment like community gardens, parks, and farmers markets are springing up not only as a means of introducing more sustainable elements into people's life, but as an essential part of educating the public about the importance of resources. Here in our country, we have many energy-related laws, which includes these too. So the first one is the implementation of Republic Act 11285, or Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act. The purpose of this law is to institutionalize energy efficiency and conservation as a national way of life geared towards the efficient utilization of energy by formulating, developing, and implementing energy efficiency and conservation strategies and programs to improve the country's energy supply security and mitigate the impact of high imported fuel prices to local markets and protect the environment in support to the economic and social development goals of the country.
So this law aims to improve the efficient use of energy in the country and provide incentives for energy efficiency and conservation initiatives. It suggests that we must all make effort to use all available energy resources wisely and efficiently in compliance with the Act's basic rules. Dito po naka-indicate ang paggamit natin sa maximum capacity ng mga resources na meron ng ating bansa sa pamamagitan po ng pagkakaroon ng mga programs and projects para masolusyonan ng ibang problema na meron tayo tulad nga po ng energy crisis na kung saan posible na pong magkaroon ng kakulangan sa supply pati na po ang pagtaas ng presyo ng mga imported fuels na binibenta sa mga local markets. Next is the Republic Act 9513, also known as the Renewable Act of 2008. This law was systematized to confirm the government's commitment to increasing the utilization of renewable energy resources available in our country. This law aims to effectively minimize possible harmful emissions and achieve economic development while protecting the health and the environment. Renewable energy is a critical component of the country's low-emission development strategy as it helps in addressing issues regarding climate change, energy security, and access to energy. This law required the state to accelerate the exploration and development of renewable energy resources to achieve energy self-reliance of the country, increase its utilization by institutionalizing the development of national and local capabilities, encourage its development and utilization as tools to effectively prevent or reduce harmful emissions, and establish necessary infrastructure and mechanisms to carry out the stated mandates in this act. This law suggests the utilization of renewable energy resources such as solar, wind, hydro, biomass, geothermal, and ocean energy. Itong law naman po ay tumutukoy sa paggamit po natin ng alternative energy resources tulad po ng mga nasabi ko kanina para po mapababa ang mga negative effects ng fossil fuels na ginagamit natin ngayon and para po mas mapabuti na rin ang economy natin in a way na mas magkakaroon pa po ng mga karagdagang trabaho ang mga mamamayan and mapoprotektahan pa sila pati na ang environment natin. Here in our country, there are groups of people who plan and organize a set of activities as well as strategize efforts and initiatives to promote a specific goal that aims to raise awareness regarding the issue for us to achieve a social change. And some examples of these are these campaigns. A Filipino-born global grassroots solar lighting movement called Liter of Light launched the Light It Forward Challenge on July 1, 2020, uniting artists, the media, businesses, and the public sector to change the world from home with the use of social media, encouraging people to take action starting from their homes. Light It Forward gave Filipinos a new way to connect for good with just 20 minutes of their time. Inspired by the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, the campaign harnesses the power of social media to spread its message, allowing people to take action regarding the energy crisis that we're experiencing from home. The launch of the first ever digital to offline campaign of its kind, Light It Forward invites ordinary people to do extraordinary things through building solar lights for communities without electricity, even in the midst of this global health crisis. With the main theme of connecting minds, creating the future, 120 change makers were selected from over 7,000 applications to showcase the way that their solutions are paving the way for a cleaner, greener tomorrow, shining a light on how Filipino malasakit is paving a way for a brighter future in a tangible and measurable way. Sa campaign pong ito, nabigyan po ng kit yung mga participant na gagamitin po nila para gumawa ng solar light which will only take less than 30 minutes to assemble. Gumawa po ang Liter of Light ng online videos na magsiserve po as guide sa mga participant para i-assemble yung mga devices na pinrovide sa kanila. Tulad po dun sa Ice Bucket Challenge, after po nilang magawa yung challenge, magcha-challenge pa po sila ng ibang tao na parang magiging chain po. In this campaign, young Negronenses called on the public to promote and engage in regenerative practices for the protection of the environment as they shared their personal experiences in blogs, which were cited in a contest that aims to recognize the creative content. Geothermal power firm Energy Development Corp, which has been behind the Geoescuela contest for several years now, brought it back to continue inspiring the youth to be good stewards of the environment. With the theme of Negros Beyond Sustainability, young Negronenses are encouraged to join the movement toward cleaner energy sources and ultimately a better world. It emphasizes the importance of regenerative practices which will do more good for the planet and society. Sa campaign naman pong ito, nagkaroon ng pa-contest na tinatawag na Geoescuela na kung saan ay gumawa po ang mga contestant ng vlogs na nagpapakita ng mga regenerative practices para po sa ikabubuti ng environment. May mga cash prize rin po para sa top 3 na may pinakamagandang vlog. With this campaign po, Energy Development Corporation became the country's premier renewable energy company and one of the world's largest geothermal producers.
Hello everyone, I am Mark Lawrence Pasha, one of the prominent speakers here in the Philippines. I am here to add up your knowledge and give a brief information about the inventions. First, the waste transformers or turning non-consumable organic waste into clean energy and fertilizer on site. For a more clarified information, it is a digester installed on site where organic waste from hotels, malls, and etc. will be converted into clean energy and organic fertilizer to shorten the time in transporting organic waste to landfills. Synthetic fertilizers are not advisable for the production and the application in the agricultural lands. Second, Geothermal wave energy or a energy conversion of ocean waves to electricity. It is an interconnected rectangular parallel pipe that produces electricity by relying on the movement of the sea or ocean waves. It is easy to utilize on constructing due to its simplicity and sophisticated form or build-off. This invention is very adaptable and practical on off-grid islands, coastal companies, and to be exact, the coastal countries. Third, the clever energy mapping, or in short, the CLEMAP. It is a continuous source of energy of the civilization supplied by the heat and transportation system, and it increases the renewable energy, and it is also a threat for the energy systems. CLEMAP is very responsible for all the records of the energy used or supplied and knowing the action that needed to be done because of its own sensor. Fourth, the Heliorec floating solar power plant. It is way too different to the usual or commonly used solar power plant due to its efficiency level. The main reason of why it is different from the existing solar power plant is that it cools down the temperature of the panel that receives more energy and efficiency rate that the panel could provide. It also preserved the land where this Heliorec located and open up new market prospects. The last but not the least invention, the laser crystal ceramic, or in short, the LCC light. The LCC light are recyclable, pollutant-free, and resource-saving since they do not contain phosphorus or mercury. Because of their organic coating, LCC bulbs are fundamentally different from the light-emitting diode technology. The artificial LCC crystals absorbs heat to provide more light, making them even more energy efficient than the current technology. LCC technology is highly adaptable and scalable, and it may be used for tube lamps, street lights, ceiling lights, and panels.
Now that the first three parts are discussed, the discussion part will now be reported by none other than Miss Universe host Vince Harvey and our Asian songbird Regina Nadonga.
The Philippine power sector currently relies on fossil fuels about 77% and is expected to increase the coal-based plants to meet the future energy demand, which would negatively affect the environmental outcomes. This will prompt the growth and spread of energy sectors because its bigger portion that extracts, leaving less energy to other sectors. This cause impractical irregularity on fuel costs that bigger company can be able to stand to pay.
So what are the stand or opinion ng aming group? We are strongly against the insufficient supply of the fossil fuels. And bakit? Here are the reasons why opposed kami sa isyong ito. First, it can lead to a lack of energy in our country. Alam natin yon, which could lead to the world falling. So, hindi lang sa ating bansa, kundi sa buong mundo talagang babagsak kapag insufficient ang ating fossil fuels. Second is negative outcomes in other aspects such as transportation, electricity, availability ng iba't ibang bansa, and resources ng scarcity. So, third is high cost, and the fourth is massive economic and industrial and global damage. So, dami-dami na yan, magkakarugtong na yan, magkakakonektado na talaga. Once the insufficient supply ang ating fossil fuels ay malaking epekto talaga sa ating bansa at sa ating mundo, which is magkakaroon ng damage. So, how do we see this issue in a few years? If this issue is not addressed, our administration may face consequences not only within the government, but also in our country and around the world. And the supply of fossil fuels must restore as soon as feasible. If the Paris Agreement's minimal 2 degrees Celsius warming target is met, fossil fuels will shrink for around half of total primary energy production in 2050, down from over 77% in 2020. According to S&P Global Platts Analytics 2020, June 23, and if this occurs, it will have a tremendous negative impact on all of us, which we do not want to occur. So if there isn't it a concrete solution to this problem in the next few years, it's probable that the use of fossil fuels may decline. Will this issue remain unsolved in the country? The issue remains unresolved because the Philippines is currently dealing with another issue. According to the International Trade Administration 2020, April 22, the Philippines is experiencing a growing energy crisis as the Malampaya gas fields, which supply 30% of Luzon energy consumption, are expected to run dry by 2024. An ever-increasing population, an infrastructural boom ordered by an administration, and some of the highest electricity rates in SE, all of these factors combine to create serious challenge in Asia. Here are the solutions that can be suggested to resolve the issue. First, joint advocacy, organization, programs, campaign regarding the fossil fuels. Second, invest tools or equipment to increases the fossil fuels. And lastly, provided education for fossil fuels.
All I can say is energy is important to our nation for many reasons. It is a key economic driver because it offers new market opportunities for different businesses. However, the crisis is penetrating and the action of our country or our government is not enough. Actually, I truly appreciate their action and the platform of different organizations such as Greenpeace in addressing the problem, but up to now, we can still see the progress behind those efforts. Why? Mm, Actually, it is very hard to determine why, despite all the efforts since before, our country is still not moving forward. I know that providing energy alone to our nation has been already a challenge in recent years. And so alternating to a new renewable resources will be much harder. But if the government put a serious thought about it and really focus in this problem, I think our country can be free from fossil fuels and can give a solution to diminishing supply of fossil fuels. And since we have two Miss Universe guests here and one Mr. Poggy, let's have a Q&A portion. You Miss Universe 2015 Pia Joy words back. My question is, what is your opinion to this issue in our country and what can you suggest about it?
This issue taught us to embrace a clean energy future, so we must address it as soon as possible. The best way to make changes is one step at a time. Focus on one or two ideas at a time, and don't forget to celebrate progress. Even if it's a small progress, still a progress. Fire made us human, fossil fuels made us modern, but now we need a new fire that makes us safe, secure, healthy, and durable. Our wisest long-term investment is not in the dirty, polluting fossil fuels from the past, but in the clean energy of the future. Thank you.
Mm. Thank you for that wonderful answer. How about you, Miss Universe 2018 Cantillana Gray? What is your opinion to this issue in our country and what can you suggest about it?
Energy crisis is a serious issue that we all should be aware of. It is something that has a significant effect on the country, especially on the economy, as it includes our supply of energy resources which we use in our daily lives. I suggest that our country should prioritize conducting projects aiming at the country's energy transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy resources that wouldn't be harmful to the environment.
How about you, Mr. Poggy 2028 Batika? Same question. What is your opinion to this issue and what can you suggest about it?
What can I say about this issue and what are my suggestions? I think before I answer that question, first we need to know kung bakit ba tayo nandito sa sitwasyon na to. So, babalik tayo dun sa Industrial Revolution in which our ancestors maximized the usage of fossil fuels in that era. And I think hindi siya mali. Para siyang sa Avengers na yun lang yung way para mag-adapt tayo or mag-grow tayo as a species or as a human being. Parang yun lang yung way na nakikita natin kasi yun yung hinihingi ng nature sa atin para mag-grow tayo as a species. So, masusolusyonan ba natin yung lack of fossil fuels and yung climate change? As of now, Hindi. A big no, probably. Hindi natin siya masusolusyonan ng ganun lang kadali. Although, may mga researches na ginaganap and may mga probable interventions that here and there, hindi pa yun sapat. It needs further implications nga and further improvement on itself. So, ano yung masasuggest ko? First, kailangan natin ng massive cooperation and active participation. Hindi lang pwedeng isang tao lang yung gagalaw. Kasi kahit gumalaw yung isang community, halimbawa, hindi niya kayang wasakin yung idea ng climate change and yung lack of fossil fuels. Hindi niya kayang buwagin yon. Next, sunod ay kailangan natin is yung leader which respects science and upholds science. Hindi na natin kailangan yung leader na economist in which na priority nila is yung kung magsasucceed ba yung country nila or hindi. Kailangan natin ng leader na nirespeto yung science in which tutulungan tayo kung paano natin resolve yung lack of fossil fuels and yung climate change. Next, itong suggestion ko, maybe it is too naive for me, pero I think based on my researches, sabi dun sa Nat Geo, until 2075 na lang yung oil reserves natin. And I think kung magbibigay tayo ngayon or lalabas tayo ngayon ng new energy resources sa masses or sa populace, I think hindi nila agad yung tatanggapin. Kailangan natin isa-isa or unti-unti yung pag-apply ng mga bagong resources sa populace. And kaya, imbis na itabi natin yung oil reserves natin, i-maximize natin yung oil reserves natin to its full sufficiency. And by decade by decade, maglalabas tayo ng new energy resources na kung saan na maximize na yung experiment na nagawa doon and yung implication na maiaano niya sa community natin, na maibibigay niya sa community natin. So, yun, with that, not all mountains are supposedly to climb over. We need to rethink our ideas, or we need to unchain our minds. Hindi kapag sinabing bundok, ibig sabihin, akitin agad natin yung tuktok and then bababa tayo dun sa kabilang point. Pwede tayong gumawa ng roundabout way. And pwede rin natin, kung possible, pwede nating butasan sa gitna ng bundok and dun tayo dumaan, di ba? Hindi lang yun yung way. Maraming way. And yun yung gusto kong ibigay sa inyo. And sabi nga ni Stan Silberman and Steve Jobs, although I'm not cussing them, they said that sell your ideas, but for me, we should revolutionize our ideas instead of sell our ideas. And yun lang yung suggestion ko. Thank you.
Yes, I totally agree with their answer because renewable energy can play an important role in solving the diminishing supply of fossil fuels. And of course, not just that, because the energy security of our country will be solved as well and in reducing greenhouse gas emission. So let's wrap up. So that will be all for this special episode. Now, are you done asking yourselves? Are you a contributor or a preventer? Do you have now answer to that question? Then stand up and be part of our team to solve this issue. I hope this episode can help you realize the weight and urgency of energy crisis. This is Group 7. Thank you and goodbye.
That will be all. Thank you for listening and have a good day.
Sandali lang ah. Wait. Kasi may klase na rin ako sa kabila. So, inform lang ako. Anyway, again, congratulations for this group for a job well done. I appreciate the creativity there. Yung mga artista na nandyan. Salamat sa pag-join. And, well, this energy crisis is a very, very relevant topic. Lalo na ngayong pandemic na sumasabay pa pati yung pagtaas ng presyo ng mga bilihin na bukod sa isa pa nga po na sinasabi na cost natin is yung sa excuse me, na yung sa agriculture, yung mga problems na ine-encounter ng agriculture sector, sumasabay pa itong energy crisis na to. And yung mga news flashes na ipinakita kanina, it clearly shows na, yun, directly siyang nakaka-affect. Kasi nga, the higher the prices of those fuels, yun kasi yung ginagamit natin to mobilize our products, to power up our machines. 'Di ba? Kaya, ang laking effect niya. And, sabi nga natin, hindi man directly tayo, pero dadating din sa point na tayo yung maapektuhan nun. Okay? So, let's collect questions. Saglit nga lang to dahil kailangan ko na talagang puntahan yung kabilang class. Pasensya na. Go to www.menti.com and use the code 18396107. Okay? So, let's proceed muna sa first question habang meron po tayong hinihintay ng mga katanungan sa audience. You have mentioned the yung yung mga energy-related laws in the Philippines sa Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act at yung iba pang mga laws and yung mga energy-related campaigns, ganyan. So, ito kasi, ang goal naman nila is to provide other alternative or encourage people to use alternative energy sources. But I think this is somehow similar to the previous presentation, no? So, how can we encourage at this state kasi, sa totoo lang, hindi, ako personally, I'm not aware of these activities. I'm not aware of these, how these laws are being implemented. I'm not sure. Maybe, kulang lang ako sa research. But, its current state, how can we encourage the further implementation of these laws or these programs na na i-present natin sa presentation kanina. Sino ang magsasagot? Yes, Deles?
Hello po, ma'am. I just wanted to, to be enlightened to that question po. Is that referring to the community or to a society or to the government?
In general, you may specify kung gusto mo na sa community. I'm asking in general.
Actually po, those energy-related laws in the Philippines has been established since before po, and we know that alternating to a new resources, energy resources will be hard because alam naman natin na hindi ganoon kadali na mag-shift from fossil fuels to renewable energy. I think we can be able to encourage the community or society or the country as a whole if we present them the severity and urgency of this issue po. Kasi now, just like what I said a while ago po, they don't realize the ano po kasi the severity and the crucialness of this issue po. Kasi we can't deny the fact that na yung pinakamaapektuhan po ng energy crisis is not us now in this present generation, but those generation that will inherit other. That's why gusto for us to encourage them, I think we should show them so we student can be an example or to be exemplar to show them how serious this problem is po. And we should also apply those laws po in our daily lives kahit po paunti-unti, one step at a time for us to be able to make it as a routine po.
Okay. Thank you for your answer. Sa totoo lang yun nga, mahirap din naman kasi i-impose sa mga tao to, 'di ba? Without educating them first and making them aware of the problems na nangyayari ganito. Okay? Of the question here, among the inventions mentioned, meron yung mga kanina yung floating solar power plant. So, which is the most utilized in our society? Siguro, siguro most popular or most utilized yung, siguro nagamit na or naging na-appreciate na ng madla. Alin po? So, dalawang nagtaas. Sige po. Si Cantillon.
Hello po. Rinig po?
Yes po.
Ayan. Actually po, ma'am, yung mga inventions po na nakita nyo kanina ay hindi po ginagamit sa mismong Philippines kasi po sa ibang bansa po sila na-invent and doon po sila mostly ni-utilize kasi nga po, yung bansa, yun po yung inventions na naisip nilang pinakakailangan ng bansa nila. Pero kung ano po ma'am, tatanungin kung alin po yung sa tingin kong may possibility po na pinakamagamit sa society po. Yun po yung LCC light kasi nga po parang ano po siya, unlike po sa LED kasi parang yung exterior po niya na mga materials na ginamit sa kanya is highly energy efficient po. Parang ina-absorb po niya yung heat sa paligid niya para po mag-light. Yan.
Okay. So, mas okay siya sa LED. Yun ang
Yes
ibig sabihin. Okay. Good to hear that, sige, ma-search nga yan. Thank you. Excuse. Yes, Deles.
So, hello po. Actually po, among those, tulad nga po ng sinabi ni Cantillon kanina, yung mga inventions na po yun ay galing sa ibang bansa and not actually implemented in our country. But to answer that question, to formally answer that question, instead of invention, one of the alternative energy that was most utilized in our society nowadays are solar panel and windmill. Alam ko naman na familiar kayo doon. Actually, it's not overly and gradually spread over much in our country kasi there's a lot of factors that we need to consider in renewable energy resources like yung installation niya nga po, yung transportation of that device. But however po, I think it would be great if we all people would be able to have those energy po.
Okay. Thank you. Oo nga lalo yung solar. Madali sana yung solar, kaya lang ang mahal niya. Ayun. Kaya kayo, pwede nyo rin naman siya pagkakitaan bilang mga engineers naman kayo, di ba? Okay? Let's proceed to the next question. What alternative energy source do you think is the best? And why? Siguro, dagdagan natin ng and why. Sa ano, uh, hydro, thermal, hydro, yeah, wind, solar, ano pa ba? Nuclear? Nuclear is an alternative also. Ayun, ano sa tingin nyo ang best alternative sa fossil fuel? Kasi nakaka-emit siyang greenhouse gases eh. Though kailangan natin siya, we need to limit the usage din. So, ano kaya sa tingin nyo yung magandang alternative sa kanya? Fossil fuel and coal are the same. Pares lang naman silang carbon source. Yes po, Tarjo.
For me po, ma'am, solar energy po ang good sa ating
Kasi?
Kasi po, ma'am, yung solar energy po, it can also improve po yung ating air quality nga po dito sa Pilipinas kasi more polluting na po dito sa atin eh. So, for me talagang yung energy source na kailangan natin is solar energy po.
Okay. Kasi ang considerations mo naman dyan ay yung emission. Okay? Sige. Thank you. Batika.
Ma'am, sa akin naman po is yung algae oil production po and yung sa solar energy po. Algae oil production po kasi siya po yung pinaka-close which dun sa fossil fuels na ginagamit natin. And I think kapag in-implement po natin siya, yung mga tao, hindi po sila yung parang masashock or kasi parehas lang naman po siya ng fossil fuels. Then doon naman po sa solar energy, I think yung maganda po is yung sa ginagawa pong experiment ngayon na which is yung heliostat. Yung kinukuha po yung solar energy, then nire-reflect po siya sa malaking mirror. Then yung mirror na po yun is nag-i-store po siya ng solar energy sa loob ng stone.
Oh. Okay. So, ang answer mo ay solar and ano yung isa?
Yung algae.
Oil. Oh, okay.
Apo.
Sige. Ma-search nga rin yan. Sige. Thank you. We don't have questions pa ba? Ayan, sorry. May nagtaas? Yes, Deles. Yes po.
Hindi po Sorry po nawalan po ng connection.
Okay, sige. If solar energy is the best natural source, does it mean na wala ng CFCs na nai-emit ito during its production process? Oh, nice question. Oo nga naman. Parang ang magandang analogy ng tanong na to is yung metal straws na alternative sa single-use straws. In the process ba, wala ba siyang pollution? Parang ganun. Yes po, Deles.
It is just in my own opinion kasi yung mindset natin once na may solution tayo, nasa isip natin kailangan wala na tong drawbacks. But in solar energy po, help to reduce and to be an alternative energy instead of using fossil fuels kasi nga nagdi-diminish na yung supply niya. But it doesn't mean na wala na siyang drawbacks. Of course, nag-i-emit pa rin siya ng CFCs but not unlike fossil fuels, yung ini-emit niya is mas onte kaysa sa fossil fuels. And
okay.
In my opinion po, solar energy is not the best natural source or alternative energy. I don't know if you're familiar sa MFCs, sa microbial fuel cell. Yung notion niya po is the same as doon sa electric filter. In which gumagamit ginagamit natin yung potential of microbes to create electricity. I think it would be the best and practical way to shift from fossil fuels kasi po hindi lang energy crisis yung masosolusyonan niya, pati na rin yung pagtaas ng volume ng wastewater natin sa Pilipinas. Ayun lang din.
Okay, thank you. I agree with you yung sige, ma-search nga din yung MFCs. And sayang nga, kaya nanginayang ako sa electric filter kasi pwede pa sa amin ma-improve tapos ang ganda dahil nga ma-address nga yung water pollution. Hindi sana yung tubig sa Manila Bay, no? Mapadaan doon bago nila palagay yung dolomite. Anyway, I also agree with your statement na may solution, meron din siya mga drawbacks, but as future leaders, kailangan maging practice na natin or practice na natin yung habit na whenever there's a solution, kailangan talaga natin siya i-assess fully before we implement it, before we suggest it. Kasi dadating din sa point na kayo magde-decide for our society. And hindi tayo pwedeng maging kagaya ng ibang leaders natin na apply lang ng apply nang hindi tinitingnan kung ano yung mga drawbacks niya, 'di ba? So there's no absolute solution talaga to the problem. Ang kailangan natin siguro is hanapin talaga yung medyo least, yung least talaga yung mako-compromise sa sector, okay? Thank you for your answer. Unfortunately, I have questions pa dito. Siguro magandang sulyapan nyo na, oh. Ayan, what's your opinion on nuclear energy? And then ito, hindi ba mas magandang alternative source ang wind? Yeah. Anyway, I will be giving the copies to you for you to post it on our channels. Okay? Tapos, kasi hindi na talaga natin kaya pang i-extend ng bongga dahil po may klase pa po ako. Okay? Anyway, salamat sa inyong mga efforts at sa napakagandang presentation ninyo. And I hope you learned something from the presentation kahit nung umpisang-umpisa pa lang. And I'm very happy sa kung paano nyo na-handle at na-deliver yung mga information despite the complexity of each topic. Okay, so thank you for today and take care of yourselves. Hindi nga seryoso, mag-ingat kayo at makapag face-to-face na sana sa susunod. Okay, thank you. See you next week.
Thank you po, ma'am.
Bye, ma'am. Thank you.